Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome back to all of you for the first of two sessions here at Evolution Sim Racing this week. Tonight, it's round 3 of the GT4 TCR Multi-Class Championship here at Virginia International Raceway. Tonight, we host our first extended format of one 15-minute race, followed by a second 45-minute feature race. And Dara, as though the 15-minute races weren't frantic enough, around a circuit of this nature, we could see a whole lot of drama unfolding tonight, especially as the championship really begins to ramp up.
Yeah, and drivers are going to be absolutely clamouring down in towards turn 1 to get themselves into a good position on the opening lap. Of course, race number 1 setting the grid for race number 2, meaning that drivers are really going to be wanting to get themselves up the order in as quick a time as possible. At the same time, we could see some collisions between drivers, knocking them back down the order, and they're not going to have long to recover if they don't want to be starting right at the back of the field for race number 2. And don't forget, double points for that 45-minute race as well, so it's going to be critical to be at the sharp end.
Yeah, absolutely right. We've got nearly 50 drivers here tonight, and as we've described, the twisty technical nature of the circuit, you can see it there on the track map. It's absolutely crazy. We've got, well, by my map, we've got about 17 corners on this circuit, but a lot of those have an A section to them, so really it's closer to 20, and we've got that tricky run through turn 1, which is pretty slow speed, pretty technical section. Then it opens up as we head through the snake section of 7, 8 and 9, and then we reach the tight, slower speed corner on the circuit before a real long stretch down toward Madison Avenue on the back straight, and then roller coaster to end the circuit through 15, 16 and 17 before we head back across the start-finish line. And that will be our whole lap, 5.2 kilometre distance here tonight, and so much of that will be taken at full throttle. Of course, 2 classes to contend with tonight, the TCRs and the GT4, so watch out through the slower sections of the track at those GT4 guys catching with pace on the back of the TCRs then. So, as always, before we get ahead with things, let's take a look at our series sponsors. As always, very quickly, we have Kame, who you'll see on pretty much all the broadcasts these days. These guys offer the driver trophies and are, I would say, the primary sponsors for the championship, enabling us to do what we do. So a big thanks, as always, to the Kame group. We also have the GP2 group and Keenan Eco Energy, so thank you to those for their continuous support for making this championship possible. So then, a quick look at the calendar as well before we move on. This is the first of our 5 races in America here at Virginia: Long Beach, Sebring, Kota and Imola, which will take us all the way through to the start of February. We do need a slightly updated calendar. We announced earlier in the week that all the sessions in the GT4 Championship will be dry throughout the season. Those 3 mixed condition races will no longer have mixed conditions. We're just going to be dry and sunny throughout the entirety of the championship, and you can see, as we said earlier, it's the first of that one 15-minute, one 45-minute round, which will really throw a different dynamic in for the drivers after they got a little bit used to the pre-season rounds and the opening 2 rounds. It's now the first time that these guys are going to have to contend with a mandatory fuel stop, I believe, in that 45-minute race. So first then, the GT4 Pro class standings. We'll run you through the order of what is 5 championships that we have on offer in this championship. And first, as we said, it's the GT4 Pro class, currently being headed by Mr. Ben Smith, a debutant here at ESR for Ignium Motorsports. He's had a whole load of podiums, 4 podiums to his name, and another top 4, yet to finish outside the top 5. It's a close battle in behind for William Humphrey. He's had 4 wins to his name. We saw him go off the circuit back at Zolder, just about getting himself back into the top 10. But that early scrap for the championship is definitely on the cards between these 2 drivers. Thomas Pugh, Joe Sparrow and Yannis Olber round out the top 5 in what is again a pretty tight scrap for that final trophy spot in the top 3. Adam Atherton and Jacob Bonner are ahead of Marius Hibmer, who's got 2 podiums to his name, but with that DNF, it's really harmed him so far. Podium, strong result, strong haul of points for the pretty much the only Aston Martin on the grid, but so far, top 8 is all he can muster. Josh Ostick is next ahead of Jeff Hibbert, rounding out the top 10. It's Jacob Jenner and Jeremy Orlemans who just get themselves on the score sheet. Jeremy down there with 66 points. He's the 12th place driver at the moment.
Looking forward to the Am class. Been a pretty tight championship battle so far, generally up and down the field, but at the front, for the time being at least, it's Niels Kula. He's opened up a bit of a gap when we were last out at Road America. He's now got 30 points of an advantage over his closest rival, I should say, Robin Noel Brown. Those 2 drivers, though, splitting all 5 of the wins so far this season, and they are going to be the benchmark looking forward. Liam Fraser for the Moonshiners Racing Club with a couple of second places, 1 at Zolder and 1 at Road America, really doing well to keep himself in contention, but he's just about holding off John Ludbrook, who is in 4th. Reminder that, of course, those top 3 drivers get the trophies, not quite the top 5 that we had last season. So Liam Fraser and John Ludbrook, for the time being, are going to be fighting it out hammer and tong for that final trophy position. Don't count out the likes of Luke Bailey, though. Good performances at Road America has catapulted himself up into the top 5, and with the podium of 5th and 6th as well. Consistency looking like it's going to be key for him if he wants to get himself towards the top 3. Daniel Paul is over the 100-point threshold after some consistent performances last time out at Road America as well. Dennis Curler, though, was only here for last week, wasn't here at Zolder for the opening round, and so all of his 99 points come from last round. And reminder that he started at the back of the field and managed to get to 2nd in class by the end of the race, so definitely want to look out for tonight. Edward Grobe and Charlie Stottard are on 97 points. They're tied there. They've got a little bit of work to do. Klaas Vellum is not too far behind, and the Germans just inside the top 10. Matt Stace and podium sitter from Road America, Rob Gregg, are 11th and 12th, and they'll be looking to get themselves into the top 10 tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. What a way to round out the GT4 standings. We've got a whole nother set to go through this time round, of course, including that team's championship as well, which is also pretty tight toward the top. But so far, leading the line in the TCR Pro class, it's Logan McKenzie, the American driver, making also a debut here. A new team and a new set of drivers in it. Logan, one of the highest iRatings that we have on the grid. He leads the way ahead of Jaden Scotton, just 12 points separating the 2 of those. Slightly bigger gap down there towards Anthony Hilton, the Audi driver. He's got himself on the podium just once so far this season, and he's improved his results, ironically, there. Every single race so far this season, he's taken a step forward. Could we see him getting a P2 and a race win to continue that run? Let's see. I think it'll be quite difficult, but you never know. Behind him then, it's Andrew McKinley. We saw him having a great run out last time round, getting the hat-trick of race victories, one of 3 drivers to do that in the same night, and I believe that will then make it one of 5 drivers to do that in ESR history. So a great haul of points, the only points that he's brought in so far this season, good enough to sit him inside the top 4, just 4 points off the hands of one of those trophies. Max Devanchani is next, yet to get himself on the podium. Strong results, consistent results last time out, and he sits level on points with Andrew McKinley ahead. Both of them closely followed by James Howarth for DXT Motorsport, BG Tips driver. He's in chat, he's with us already. And let's keep our eyes on James, see if he can get himself back on the podium. One less race tonight to do it. He had 3 last week, and he's only got 2 on his hands tonight. Scott Malcolm, the second of our Scottish drivers for Ignium Blaze, 114 points for him. Yet to get himself inside the top 5, but definitely got some consistent pace. Hasn't really had a bad result so far this season, but hasn't had a result worth shouting about too much. We spoke to him after the first round at Zolder. Fingers crossed he can get himself another good haul of points. Jay Corley in 8th. He's looking to bounce back after a very strong start of the season, but a disappointing run out this time last week at Road America. He's closely followed by Kevin Marshallsay, who again, pretty, he's there or thereabouts in most of these sessions, but really needs to get himself into that top 5, try and propel his season a little bit, get that form, on the way. Keith Calhoun, the top 10. Alok Iyengar is in P11, missed the round last week, but still on our graphic. And Branko Kupovic gets himself into the top 12 as well. The Croatian driver is on 66 points as it stands from just one round attended this time last week.
Following on from our GT4 Pro winners last week, William Humphrey, our TCR Pro winner last week, Andrew McKinley, we've got 3-time winner from Road America, Hussein Sarakadesla, heading up the TCR Am category. So 3 drivers who had superb weeks last time out. They're going to have to try and keep up that momentum going into this race here at VIR. But for Hussein Sarakadesla, great start to the season. He leads Gordon Hales by just the 12 points after Hales has picked up 4 podiums in the first 5 races. They have a little bit of a gap back to Rob Smith, but again, Smith's consistency getting on the podium last week has kept himself firmly in contention. That's where we see a bit of a gap back though, down to Steve Rubino, the American, after a win in the second race at Zolder, slipped down to 4th in the championship, and he'll be looking to get up to the top 3, but he's going to have to be looking at the likes of Jason Hannington and Andrew Fellows. Both of those drivers on 145 points after they've each had 1 third place so far this season. Danny Weir and Dean Sargent are just over the 120 point threshold as they look to keep up their consistent performances throughout the start of the season. Martin Kenyon also passed that 100 points mark on 111 in that Yorkshire DXT Motorsports car. David Randalls is inside the top 10 for Flatline Racing Yellow, and then Ashley Brooks and Mark Parkhurst, not Park Markhurst, are just outside the top 10. Of course, they weren't here for Road America. They'll need a few more points to get themselves inside the top 10.
Very good, very good. And we've got one more group to look at. This time it is the team's standings overall here in this championship. So leading the way then, it's the Kame GP2 team of Robert Noel Brown, John Ludbrook and Hussein Sarakadesla. Noel Brown doing very well in the B split of the GT3. He's doing quite well here on a Monday night, but Sarakadesla, the man who brought home those massive points in his TCR, 3 wins from 3 last time out. They're just ahead of Team Shelter, Logan McKinsey, Jay Corley and Anthony Hilton, who we've highlighted already as doing very strong. They're an all TCR team, the first team shared between the GT4s and the TCRs. Next up is the 3 Porsche GT4s of Yanis Aubert, William Humphrey and Francois Brandet for the merger of Glassec Racing and Dexterous Motorsports. The gap opening up slightly, 70 points the difference between them and the championship leaders, but not all that far behind the top 2. Still clinging on to that trophy early doors, but it's a 2-man army of Adam Atherton and Gordon Hales, who are just 2 points behind them, and that's really impressive considering that it's only their points that will count in this championship. That's for Ignium Motorsport. And rounding out the top 5, it's Flatline Racing of Daniel Poole, Jaden Scotton and Max Nevenchani. That's Flatline Racing Green, who will be ahead of, I believe, the Flatline Racing Blue team of Jeremy Ullermans, Dennis Curler and Rob Smith. Not much at all separating teams down from 3rd all the way really until we get to P7. Ben Smith, Sergio Ferreira and Keith Calhoun, the second of our Ignium Motorsports drivers, again split between the 2 classes. All said and done there, we'll round out the top 8, 9 and 10. It's the KSX or KRX team of Jacob Bonner, Luke Bailey and Charlie Stothard ahead of the final of 3 Flatline Racing teams, Marius Hibner, Josh Ostick and the main man Andrew Fellows. And finally then the Axis Simsports Blue team of Nils Culler and Mark Parkhurst. And yeah, that is all of the formalities wrapped up, and we've done that, Dara, just in time. If I cut back over to trackside, we'll see that the drivers are closing in now on the end of their practice session. And yeah, we've just got 5 seconds to go until we get ourselves underway.
Yeah, and really good to see So many drivers here this evening getting themselves ready for what should be hopefully another great instalment of the championship, and also great to see so many competitive times as well. Going to be interesting to see how this qualifying session shapes up, with a lot of these drivers chasing a good qualifying display. Not the easiest place to overtake here, and again, like we said, 15-minute race setting us up for the 45-minute. You want to really be towards the front of the field, particularly if you're in a GT4 Pro car. You don't want to be caught up in any kind of shenanigans happening behind you. We saw that happen last week in the opening race at Road America, and I think a few drivers will be looking to avoid that this time round. But the likes of John Lubrick will be hoping to get themselves competitive in their own classes, and they're about to start their qualifying session. They'll be looking to get that first lap time on the board and try and build it up from there.
Yeah, so we're right on board at the moment with John Ludbrook, currently sitting in P4 in that GT4 Am class. He's got his teammate of Robin Noel Brown just ahead of him in the standings. We have a whole host of drivers out on track now. Remember, we have a closed session tonight of 12 minutes. The drivers only have 3 laps to set their fastest time, and they'll do it independently of one another. No traffic, no one getting in the way. They're all lapping at the same time, and they'll cross the line and set their times. And yeah, John has done well so far this season. Got himself on the podium twice, and yeah, just got to try and get a banker lap in to start the session strongly. No need to push the car too aggressively in this opening lap. You've got to obviously get the tyres and the brakes up to temperature the best that you can, but you can really just warm yourself into it. Go for it on the final lap after hopefully having set 2 pretty good banker laps in the opening 2.
Yeah, it's going to be critical, I think, for banker laps at this circuit. It's a circuit where you can easily go off the road at parts, so definitely tricky for the drivers to absolutely nail, and John Lubrook is trying to do his best to keep it nice and tight through this final sector of the lap, diving down through 15 and into 16 at the final turn at Hog Pen. Let's see if he can keep it within the confines of the circuit. Very easily does, in fact, and he'll run up towards the line to set his first lap time of the session. Francois Brandet is also going to be setting a lap time as well, and I think we're about to see the tower start to light up the left-hand side of our screens, Trey.
Well, we will shortly, mate. We've got a couple of drivers who are crossing the line shortly. I'm going to give this one to Ben Smith, who's just left the pit lane. He's making his way through the final sector now, and I'm going to give you the honour, Sarah, of just riding us through the lap while I do some checks on my end, if that's okay.
All right, then. This is going to be a lap of the Virginia International Raceway, of course, just over 3.2 miles. Not quite using the full Grand East course, which is over 4 miles, with a little bit of the infield section being used, but going all the way down the back straight. But here we go then with Smith up across the line. Keep it nice and tight to the inside line, to the pit wall as you look for the braking zone on the left-hand side of the circuit, down in towards turn 1. And turn 1 and turn 2 really are just all the same part of one corner. The 2 little curbs on the inside there denoting where the corners are, but you're really thinking about the braking zone and the turning point for turn 3 as you just try and wrestle the car all the way through this left-hander. It doesn't stop turning left as you get in towards turn number 4. 4A this is, mind you, because 4B is this right-hander coming onto the snake part of the lap. You can just see through here how the track dips and dives, right then left, then right then left. You really have to straight line it to get the best run up towards the likes of turns 7, 8, 9 and 10, and these are some really fast flowing corners. Scary in a prototype car, a little bit more sedate in these GT4s, but still not comfortable for some of these drivers, and they're going to be ringing the limits of these cars as they run through this tricky left-hander at turn 10. South Bend, if you get it wrong, you'll be off the circuit, and you'll be all out of shape for turn 11. This right-hander, because you've got to get the nose turned in perfectly for a good exit. Demands a good exit. Does Oak Tree down at turn 12, because this back straight is the longest straight on the circuit. Best overtaking opportunity arguably will be down at the roller coaster, which we're coming up to, but we've got to rise over the crest past a couple of parts of the circuit where we could turn off if we were using a different layout of the circuit, but as it is, we are going all the way down to turn 13. It's going to be an inside line into the left-hander to make sure you've got the car set up for the right-hander. It's a blind crest, in fact, as you run now down the hill towards the final corner, and all you're thinking about is nailing the apex and nailing the exit to get yourself towards the line in the fastest time possible through the final little flick, and make sure you don't run it out too far wide off of the corner. Keep it nice and tight to the inside line once again and shave off every single hundredth and thousandth that you can. Let's see what Smith can do. He'll cross the line then. It's going to be a 52.723. It's not actually, it's going to be a 53.8. It said it was a 57 for a minute, but that was William Humphrey's time show.
Yeah, I was going to say, can the championship leader dislodge the man chasing him down at the front of the sheet? And sadly, he cannot. He's got Marius Hibber, Francois Brandet ahead of him, and then William Humphrey with that time of a 52.723, best part of 3/10 ahead of that Aston Martin. And I must say, a very good time for a car that is less favoured than most of these others on this circuit. The Aston Martin driver there, as I said, the only man in the championship choosing that machine, and he's set a very commendable lap time so far in this session. Here's Joe Shapara, another one of our Porsche drivers. He's about to head, I believe this is through turn 12, Oak Tree, at the very top of the circuit there. And he has that long run down now, past the secondary pit lane, all the way through down the back straight. We obviously skip out, as Dara said, we skip out Madison Ave. We don't take that small chicane on the left-hand side of the circuit now. We keep going all the way down the back straight. Through turn 14, times come in. John Ludbrook in behind his teammate in the GT4 Am class at the moment. Nearly, well, it's 0.4 of a second, but nearly half a second separating those two teammates. Some big gaps actually, Dara, at the front of each of those classes. 0.4 in the TCR Pros, 0.7 in the TCR Ams, and it's 0.7 there, the difference, which for the championship leader.
Yeah, this is true, but I think we saw this kind of theme in the last round at Road America, where we saw those big gaps for the pole times. There, it was somewhat reflected in some of the race results, but hopefully we can see some competitive grids further back, at least. The likes of that TCR Pro category with a couple of those gaps well under a tenth in Keith Calhoun, getting himself 5 thousandths behind Jaden Scotton for the second row of the grid there. So definitely chances for some good close racing. But with such a long lap nearing on 2 minutes, we really are looking at what could only be a 7-lap race to kick us off and to set the grid for race number 2. That's how short it could be. We may just about sneak an 8th, but that really would be a sneak, because if in qualifying we're going at a 52.7, then we'd be very hard pressed to get to 15 as it is, and I think we'd be going a little bit slower if we see some side by side.
Yeah, you're probably right. We just watched on as Robin Noel Brown failed to improve. Hussein Sarakadesla yet to set a lap time. He has crossed the line now, does set a valid lap time, but it's well off the pace at the moment. Best part of a second off where he needs to be. Maybe he made a mistake. It looked like a little bit of a mistake there as well, just as he went to put the loud pedal down. So maybe he's going to be down in the first sector. Let's keep our eyes on his sector times as he makes his way around the lap. That's a little bit wide as well. That right-hand tyre doesn't fancy being in the gravel. Luke Bailey was about to cross the line. He's bailed back off into the pit lane. Francois Brandet is setting off on his final lap. Reese Kitley, I'm not sure if we've seen an awful lot of Reese so far this season. Let's see if he's got anything up his sleeve. The Hyundai driver, number 24 in the TCR Am class, crosses the line but does not set a valid lap time. Set a pretty good sector 4, and he does have one more lap to do it. So here's Edouard Grobe, who is currently trying to get himself on that top spot. Let's take a look at the gaps. We can see that he's got a pretty big margin to overcome if he's going to get himself on the front row in class. Klaas Wellen has made it even harder. He's put a time in 6/10 away from his pole leader. Here's Culler leading Brown and then Vellen. And we're right on board with Grobe, who gets a little bit out of shape. He's oversteered into the right-hander. He couldn't catch it on the left, and he's found himself facing the wrong way through the barrier. This man, though, is still pointing in the right direction. That's Dean Sheesby. He's always there or thereabouts. Doesn't seem to be able to convert a positive result. He's currently down there in P10, 1.5 seconds away from the class leader. He's up, however, in Sector 1, Sector 5, and let's see, I think he's improving in the final sector as well. He set his personal best Sector 6 on his last outing. Let's see if he can beat that one last time. He's very close, in fact, to an improvement here, so he could put himself into the top 8. 9th might be the best thing that he can do, though.
You're hoping you can hear me, Joe,
I can now.
as we run our way. Ah, perfect. Ah, you got me worried there for a second. But yeah, hopefully we'll see a couple more lap times from drivers towards the end. I was going to say, I was halfway through my point and I realised you must not have been able to hear me. That 8 laps at 1 minute 52.4 would get you to 15 minutes and a second. So I think we're looking at an 8-lap race here. I doubt we're going to be able to get anything faster than that consistently. And that's what it's going to be. Really, really fast and frantic. And at this circuit, only a couple of real overtaking opportunities as well. Going to be tricky, I think, for a lot of the guys further back to make their way through the order. And that's why these qualifying times are going to end up being so crucial. But really impressive to see the likes of Humphrey and McKenzie have over half a second worth of an advantage over their closest rival in class.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a quick note on, we have 48 of the 60 drivers with us tonight. Sadly, Kitley, Mackay and Curler weren't able to set a lap time. Kitley tried, however failed. Rob Mackay and Dennis Curler have kept it in the pit lane for the entirety of this qualifying session. And Dean Sargent, here he is. He's the last man to cross the line. Currently one of the only drivers who's yet to break into the 1 minute lap times. He's currently on a 2 minute flat, and he only improved in that 1/5 sector. It doesn't look like he's improved his overall lap time. Sadly not. Interestingly, Martin Kenyon set a 2 minute dead. So very interesting lap time there by the number 1. Again, it gripes me every season because he hasn't won a championship, but you know, it is what it is. Martin Kenyon, the number 1 Honda driver, currently down there in 8th, but with a pretty satisfying lap time.
Yeah, nicely done for him. It's always nice to have a satisfying lap time from some of these drivers. It may not be the fastest, but if you can manage to get a, like a 999 in there somewhere, it's always nice to see. As we tick down in qualifying, I think realistically, that's going to be that, isn't it, for drivers making any kind of improvements in the session. And there's going to be some very happy championship leaders, it's fair to say. Humphrey, I say that. Of course, William Humphrey's not the championship leader. Ben Smith is the championship leader, so he won't be very happy. But at this rate, I think Humphrey could find himself being the championship leader in about 15, 60 minutes' time, Joe.
Well, let's see. A quick note there. I made that mistake. Rob Mackay, speaking to himself in the third person in chat, reminds us that he pressed the wrong button and he's only here to spectate. Of course, he's not part of the championship, here on a couple of admin duties. So, yeah, I was wrong to call out him sitting in the pit lane. Interesting that he's... well, he selected the Honda, which is not a bad car, but he'll be watching on in the background then. So, the drivers will peel out of the pit lane and will commence on their formation lap ahead of our rolling start procedure. And in the meantime, let's take a look at how the grid will shape up for this first of 15, as Dara said, only a handful of laps. So William Humphrey leads the way, a time of a 1:52.450 for the Glasstec DXT team, and he will start ahead of Marius Hibmer, half a second there, 5/10 the difference between the two drivers sharing the front row. Dominant qualifying by Mr. Humphrey at the moment. Stephen Donnelly will share the second row of the grid with the GT4 Am poleman of Nils Kuller, ahead of Joe Shapara and Francois Brandet in the top 6. Row 4 will be shared by Adam Atherton and Robin Noel Brown, who start ahead of Jeremy Ulemans and Yannis Olber, who was in two minds about whether he was going to race tonight, and I'm glad that he's here. He closes off the top 10, ahead of Ben Smith, Klaas Vellen, Edward Grobe and Dean Schiesby on row 7. John Ludbrook, Liam Fraser, Lawrence de Uden and Charlie Stoth are the top 18, ahead of Jacob Bonner and Luke Bailey, the top 20. As we scroll through, it's Joseph Preston ahead of Daniel Poole on row 11, Matt Stace and Rob Gregg ahead of Jeff Hibbert and Jacob Jenner, and then we reach the first of our TCR drivers, Logan McKenzie, Andrew McKinley. We saw those two battling toe-to-toe this time last week at Road America. Looks like that's going to continue, albeit the qualifying times quite far away from one another. Jay Corley and James Howarth will round out the top 30 on the 15th row of the grid, with Jaden Scotton and Keith Calhoun ahead of Anthony Hilton. Our pole man in the TCR Am class is Gordon Hales. He's in P34, ahead of Kevin Marchaussee, Rob Smith, Max Nevincharny and Scott Malcolm, the top 38, ahead of Andrew Fellows and Hussein Sarakadeza, somewhat out the order in P4, but he's got quite a few cars in between him and his championship rival Hales. And then the final few drivers, it's Danny Weir, Jason Haddington, Mark Parkhurst, with Martin Kenyon, Dean Shisby and Dennis Curler, and then the imposter Rob Mackay, who should not be there, ahead of Reese Kitley, who will start in P48 on the 24th row of a 48 car grid.
Does that mean we can vote out Rob at the end of this race?
I think we can do whatever we like, personally.
Well, hey, everyone's going to have a good time viewing, at least. I'm sure you will. This should be an absolute cracker, but we've got a full formation lap. It's always fun to have a full formation lap, isn't it, Joe? With a long lap such as this, it gives us loads of time to mull over what we're about to see.
It really does. Gives us a chance to just take a breather. Gives the drivers a chance to take a breather, but sometimes these extra long formation laps, the ones, some circuits we start 3/4 of the way around the lap, sometimes the drivers can relax a little bit too much. The bunching up and the splitting of the field can cause some bunch-ups throughout the grid. Fingers crossed we don't see that again, but if we check the leaders all the way up at the top of that hill approaching turn 11, the guys toward the back of the field are barely coming out of turn 6. So a huge field can often lead to some big gaps. Fingers crossed though, as we have a pretty capable pole man at the front, he'll drop the hammer at an appropriate time. The run down towards the start-finish line, however, not that long, so I'm sure we'll see a lot of guys down there on the final row of the grid, probably just coming out a roller coaster 2 or 3 corners before the start-finish line.
Yeah, you've got to be careful on the opening lap to really nail your opportunities. I mean, down here, if you go too far wide, you're going to find yourself leaving Virginia and finding yourself in North Carolina. And I'd be sincere when I say that it's only about a kilometre or so between the exit of the entrance to turn 11 and North Carolina. So I think there's a few drivers going to be hoping to avoid that, but also just keeping themselves out of trouble in the opening sector. It's tight, it's twisty, there's pinch points as well, and with pretty much 50 cars on the racetrack, if something starts to go wrong towards the front of the field, it's going to be a melee, and drivers have to avoid towards the back. So drivers are going to have their wits about them, no doubt about that. I think they've learnt that over the first couple of weeks, particularly if they're new to the series. But if you're William Humphrey, Marius Hibner, Stephen Donnelly or Joe Sparrow, getting away from the rest of the pack and consolidating your position is going to be critical, because the real prize tonight is to pick up as many points as you can in that 45-minute race upcoming, because you could be picking up 100 points for a win, not just the measly 50 that you will get in this race.
Absolutely right. The leaders then are making their way around the final corner. Rob Mackay in that pace car will pull in and he'll say, off you go lads, time to get the racing underway. We've got a very short sprint race ahead of us tonight, which will determine the grid for that feature race. William Humphrey is in control. Everything looks managed toward the back of the field. We can see the final cars coming into the picture. He still hasn't dropped the hammer here, Humphrey, and he has now. The race is underway, and he's left Marius Hibner and Joe Sparrow with Stephen Donnelly napping there a little bit toward the back. He's going to have a clean run through into turn 1 as all the drivers get on the stoppers for the first time. We've got a few cars going 3 wide there. One of the Mercedes very close to going onto the grass, and now here come the TCRs. Jaden Scotton is on the outside line to one of the flatline cars. Thankfully, it looks as though everyone's got off the line cleanly. No checkups at the start of the race. A couple of guys, Joe Sparrow is around. He's off the circuit, that's turn 3. We've got one of the Glass Tech cars, that's Francois Brandet, who's had contact at the exit of 3 as well. He's going to rejoin a melee of TCRs. Bit of chaos at the start, but overall, it seems like everyone's got away well.
Oh, and another TCR going off in the background, but Joe Sparrow was running inside the top 5 off the start there, so really gutting for him to find himself spinning around. He's got a world of work to do to get himself back inside the top 5 in this GT4 Pro division. William Humphrey, though, running away at the front, as we would expect him to do, and Hibner following in suit. Jay Corley for Team Shelter trying to pick away through and up into P3 in class, but he's not going to be able to do it just yet. I'd imagine down in towards turn 11. Of course, you dip down and then you rise to the crest at the top of the track, the south end of the track, where the camber of the corner can help you slow down, can help you try and go for a bit of a send to the inside, but you've got to be more than close enough to make it work there. And so for the time being, Jay Corley stay where he is as they now try and focus on turn 13 and 14 to make a move.
Yeah, here's Adam Atherton, who's got that fired up Aubert in behind him. We saw him take that early spin. He's recovered it quite well. Oh, sorry, it was Brandy who took that spin. So Yannis Aubert has started this race well. He's up 3 places. Ben Smith as well, the current TCR Pro Championship leader, momentarily goes off the circuit, but he has also gained 3 places at the start. Hasn't lost anything there with that slight mistake, and at the moment the gap's starting to open up. There's some action here, an overtake on potentially, as we see Daniel Poole, the 282 machine, going around the outside of Luke Bailey. That one's going to be an easy one to do. Comes over to defend the inside line, thinks about going up the inside of the second NSX car. Oh, and the 2 teammates there nearly took each other out. That's a late move by Daniel Poole, although it was okay in the end. Jaden Scotton, he's gone off the circuit down here at turn 1. It's always a tricky braking zone, and there's a pile-up. Francois Brandet involved in that as well, and he is not sitting in the kind of place that you want to find yourself. Just about gets himself moving once again.
Your heart's got to go out to Francois Brandet at the start of this season. Has just not had the rub of the green. Had an awful opening couple of rounds at Zolder. Not particularly his fault either, and you may see something similar from him, or have seen something similar from him already in this one. Ben Smith is looking for a top 5 in the GT4 Pro. He's going to try and find itself to the inside at turn 11. He looks for it. That gap's going to close, though, and he's maybe going to have to wait for turn 13. There's a car wide off the circuit. That's Marius Hibner off the road, and Hibner's still in the grass. He's going to be rejoining a little bit slower. This could create a 2x2 moment on the run down in towards turns 13, 14 and 15 at the roller coaster. This could be very, very dangerous. 3 wide maybe, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say that slow car would really cause a little bit of an issue. Nearly 4 wide in a certain way there. The 2 Ignium cars have done well to get ahead and stay ahead. The Aston Martin was always going to struggle to reach the braking zone before that pace changes. Little rear contact there with Aubert, forces him off the circuit, and the car in behind just about gets out of his way as the Glass-Type machine rejoined the circuit. Risky move there slightly. Himber has managed to keep himself in a straight line, but a good start by those 2 Ignium drivers. That's Ben Smith and then Adam Atherton in behind him. Nils Kuller is the next car up the road. It's currently a 1-2-1-2 with the 2 GT4 Pro drivers ahead, followed by the 2 GT4 Am drivers. And there's a little bit of pressure here. That's actually Andrew McKinley leading the way in the TCRs, putting a GT4 car under some pressure into turn 1.
Yeah, that's never a good sign if you're a GT4. I mean, there could be some damage on that Am car. We'll have to keep an eye on that because it's not looking particularly useful through some of these corners. But mind you, a TCR isn't particularly useful compared to a GT4 either, so that may be why they're staying relatively close. Tower on the left-hand side. I like how you put him down as a touring car, rocket car at the bottom there. That's good work. To see Rod at the bottom anyway. Still 10 minutes to go in this one, but what a move that was from Ben Smith, because I think you have the best camera angle, Joe, to really show it. Went around the outside, even of his teammate, got it done without any contact, and Ben Smith up into P3, exactly where he needs to be, because he needs to be as close as he can to William Humphrey.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He does. And that gap, though, really starting to open up. 10 minutes to go here. Already a third of the way through the race. Charlie Stothard is falling down the order. He looks like he's got a poor exit out of Oak Tree down at turn 12. He's going to be passed by Preston, Den Uden and Lubrook. Den Uden is the man in the Pro class at the moment. All the drivers coming down this back straight now from P3 in the Am class all the way down to Luke Bailey in that golden white Porsche toward the back of the picture. Charlie's recovered okay at the moment, and again, apologies for not having the tower up. Nearly 5 minutes went past before I noticed. I'm not really sure how that's possible. I guess it's because I've got my own private time in tower, and sometimes I don't think that you guys can't see that. George Barra, is that ahead? No, it's Joseph Preston ahead, who's hassling that Mercedes of Laurent, and he's moved to the outside line. He's not going to get a chance to move to the inside before the braking zone. Let's see how they get on. Brakes very early on that inside line, and then all of a sudden looks as though he's going to go deep, but he does get it slowed down. Tucks it in nicely. Joseph Preston for JST is going to have to stay where he is at the moment, but of course the pro driver ahead doesn't really want to do too much to upset the Am drivers as their race continues on. Joe Sparrow is getting mixed in here with Jacob Jenner and Hilton. That's Jacob Jenner off the circuit, needs to get it facing the right way again, and Gordon Hales there has got a GT4 on his inside, doesn't quite make it work. He leads the way in that TCR Am class. He's got Sarika Desla within a second though, and you can see him just coming into the picture now. So once that Porsche gets out the way, it's game on for the lead in the Am class.
It's always good to see some Am class battling in these races. Not all about the pros. It's good to see also the Ams mixing it in with the pros in some of these cases as well, as we see GT4 make its way through past Gordon Hales. One of the GT4s likely to be caught up in some of the incidents that we saw early on in the race, just trying to recover every position that they can. And in a race like this, where you're going to start exactly where you finish, it's really important for the GT4s to make their way through the TCRs to avoid having to get through on them at the start of race number 2. So really, really crucial for these guys at the moment to work their way through. As I think there's battling between the likes of Smith and Hibner and Vellen and Sheesby as they've ducked and dived compared to each other on the timing tower. Ben Smith defending his P3. We'll have to see if he can end up holding on to it.
Well, let's cut up to that battle now. Another flash of the headlights ahead, I believe. Not sure who that is actually. It could be Ben. Yeah, that is Ben Smith, who's either applauding something or getting a little bit frustrated with those headlights. Remember, of course, such a short round, only a 15-minute race, is effectively a little bit of a sprint qualifying race. These guys will start that feature in the order that they finish this one, so no reverse grids in the offing in this one. That's one of the Ickney machines up the inside of Albert, but that will become the inside line again for Albert. Adam Atherton has to back out. The cars making their way through the snake section for the 4th time in this race. We're already nearing the second of the two third point in this race. Gaps starting to appear, but it's all up for grabs. That battle that we left earlier, Preston, Stothard and Fraser, still very close for the runnings in the GT4 Am class. All of a sudden, Adams really put the pressure on Albert. Let's see what the exit is. He's slightly entered that corner a little bit wider, might be able to get the power down. Let's see what a little bit of straight line speed, a little bit of a toe can do. He's definitely going to gain on Albert here. It's over to Yanis to pick his side, stick to it. Is he going to give him the inside line here? He doesn't want to seem to make a move too early. In fact, doesn't like he's going to make that move at all. He definitely could have pulled out and launched into the braking zone, but Atherton stays where he is for the time being. Maybe he's aware that Yanis has the pace. He might want to try and take him toward the end of the race.
Yeah, just going to stay cool and calm for the time being, which is an interesting strategy that I think we are seeing from him for the time being. Of course, we've got Jeremy Ulemans just behind, waiting to pounce if there's any move to be made. For Marius Hibner, though, he's trying to recover back to the top 3. Ben Smith is the target as they run across the line. Humphrey on a 52.5, just to show how different the pace is from the front of this battle. It's about 5-6 tenths quicker for William Humphrey. Inside line from Hibner. He's absolutely centered up the inside. Ben Smith won't be too happy about the manner of the move, but Hibner's got it done, and the Danish driver is going to get a treatment of a lights flash, but either way, he's back up into the top 3. And Ben Smith's got it all to do once again. I don't think he was terribly pleased, Ben Smith, before about the Am drivers potentially him being in his way, but Hibner's used those guys to his advantage and found himself back onto the podium.
Yeah, I think the headlight button on that Porsche steering wheel is going to be a little bit worn down by the end of this race. He's flashed it quite a few times already. Would have been driving for 10 minutes, but that's okay. You can tell, however, that he's really eager to get on the back of this Aston Martin. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a move into that tricky sort of double apex braking zone through 11 and 12. You're sort of going to start your braking through 11, and it sort of continues before you take that tight and twisty tight right-hander coming up now. Is he going to get the run on the Aston Martin? The 2 cars ahead also in a battle of their own. Doesn't look like he's going to run. Let's see. He won't want to take that position back, I'm sure. Get himself on to the podium. John Rudbrook and Nils Kuller in a little bit of a race of their own for the battle at the front of the GT4 Am class. doing so well to currently be inside the top 4 drivers, 2 by 2 into the back straight 14 and 14A before we head through the roller coaster section. Colour maybe looks to hang it around the outside of Ludbrook. This is for the battle for the lead of the race. He's held onto it, got that move done, and hit me late on the brakes. He's going to allow Smith to sneak on through, and he absolutely has. A change in the order there for both sets of those drivers. Hipma's come off worse, and he's got Yannis Aubert up behind him now. He's getting by.
Yeah, and Yannis Aubert is doing a good job to try and make his way through and up the order. He's got to be careful because Hipma will be very much involved on the inside line, but he's not going to be able to do anything there unless he can use the second apex to his advantage. Adam Atherton wouldn't mind something happening between these two. He'd benefit by getting himself up into the top 4, but Yannis Aubert's going to get the move done. Unless Hipma again around the outside trying to find the line, but with so many left-hand corners and with so much rotation, you're never going to be able to do it all the way around the outside there. And Yannis Aubert up into P4 and looking to try and get after the podium of Ben Smith, who has now got Robin Brown between himself and his closest rival.
Yeah, so William Humphrey well and truly checked out. We kind of expected it after such a dominant qualifying performance. Up the inside there is the Porsche Flatline Racing green car of Daniel Poole. So that's 2 positions lost there by Joseph Preston, who was initially putting Stothard under pressure, and now the teammate of Stothard, Luke Bailey, is putting that Mercedes under pressure as they head again through that snake section. Just over 2 minutes to go. We're only going to have probably 1 or 2 more laps after William crosses the line. Marius Hibner, he's had a mistake. He's losing pace again. The same place that we saw him slow on the exit of 12. He's slow once again, and this time he's lost out to Ulemans, Atherton, and then Aubert that we saw getting by at the start of the previous lap. So not the best couple of laps for the Aston Martin driver, who was looking to keep that championship on course at the moment in P8. As we said, 2 strong results on the podium twice this time last week. At the moment though, down in P7. That's been his favourite place to finish. 2 P7s and 2 P3s for the 334 machine so far this season. Got no traffic behind him. He's all eyes forward at the moment, but he's running out of laps to make anything happen.
Yeah, and we are on to the final lap now. William Humphrey will cross the line only about 15-20 seconds after the time is 6-0, but the white flag is flying. Oh no, and there goes round about Atherton for the Ignium Spark team. He's got around on the final opening corner of this opening race, and he will drop down to P7. He won't have lost out a lot in the grand scheme of things, but not good news for Atherton here.
Yeah, I think he's done it of his own accord. Yeah, he has just oversteered on the braking, maybe locked the rear slightly, and he's got himself into a spin. That's unfortunate for him. Didn't lose out on too much though. Only 1 or 2 positions lost on the Mercedes driver. Has a big gap in behind. Let's take a look how the full standings line up then. You can see Nils Culler, Robin Noel Brown doing well in the Am class to stay inside the top 5. There's Class Wellham, Dean Shoesby, good result for Dean, and John Ludbrook inside the top 12. And we look down toward the bottom of the grid. It's Andrew McKinley who leads the way, but I don't see him on that time until there he is in P23. It'll be very interesting with quite a few of those GT4 drivers starting in and amongst the TCR cars, how these guys get on. William Humphrey though, he's done what he has done quite a few times already this season, and he will round off what has been a pretty commendable drive. No mistakes, got away from pole very, very quickly, and he'll finish with over a 6.5 second gap ahead of Stephen Donnelly. A flash of the headlights for Mr. Humphrey, who wins. That is now 4 straight victories in a row for Mr. Humphrey. Stephen Donnelly, what a result for him at the moment. I don't actually see him inside the top 12 in our standings. That is probably Stephen's best result of the season. Ben Smith, the current championship leader, will get himself on the podium. Didn't look like for a moment that he was going to do it, but he has converted that result. Nils Culler and Robin Noel Brown have already exited to the pit lane, but those guys will take P1 and P2 in the Pro class. And then here come the TCRs. Andrew McKinley makes his way around the final few corners.
Yeah, and for Stephen Donnelly, that was his first podium of the season, wasn't he? Last week at Road America, so he's right down the order. For Andrew McKinley, what a race it's been for him in the TCRs. He's just been able to stamp his authority on the rest of the race and have an absolutely huge gap to Anthony Hilton in behind him. So what a race for McKinley. He won all 3 races back at Road America. He's won 4 in a row now, and he's put himself inside the top 3 in the championship, and he's not even done 2 of the 6 races in this season.
Yeah, Gordon Hales will beat out Hussein Sarakadesla, so Huss's win streak comes to an end. What a tight championship battle that seems to be between these 2 drivers. Only 12 points in it coming into the session tonight, and Gordon has done one over him in that first race. It won't be enough to take that P1 spot just yet, but if he can get away from him in the feature race, he could definitely just pip him to that top spot in the championship by the time we reach the next round. So let's see how those guys get on. It was Mark Parkhurst who got his first podium of the season, started the season strong with a P4 at Zolder, missed last week at Road America, and he's picked up where he left off by getting himself on the podium. He finished ahead of Jason Haddington and Andrew Fellows, who round out the top 5.
Pretty good race overall from, I think, quite a lot of the grid to get ourselves ready for the 45-minute race, which is to come. And a lot of drivers, I think, will be happy and not so happy in this order with where they're going to be placed.
Yeah, absolutely right. So quick rundown. We have a 5-minute warm-up ahead of us, so we have lots of time, as always, to bring you the results of that first sprint race. Mr. William Humphrey then, as we saw, commanding lead, crossed the line 6.5 seconds ahead of the Irishman Stephen Donnelly for JSD Racing. A very strong result for him, so congratulations to the pair of them. Ben Smith, the current GT4 Pro Championship leader, rounded off the podium ahead of Yanis Olber and Marius Hibmer. That's only Olber's 3rd top 4 finish of the season. Jeremy Ulemans in the top 6 ahead of Adam Atherton. Lauren Dunn-Uden in the top 8 ahead of Jacob Bonner and Jacob Jenner. Rounding out the top 10, it will be Francois Brandet, who we saw getting involved in an incident, the only Frenchman in his class, finishing just outside the top 10, but he on the lead lap, crucially. Jeff Hibbert finished a lap down, but will score points, and something would tell me that Joe Shapara of JSD Racing will not classify, having finished 4 laps down. Only 13 drivers in that class, but congratulations, most of that grid scoring points, which is always great to see.
And I think for anybody who hasn't, who is anything more than 1 lap down, won't be getting points. So in that nature, everyone bar Dennis Curler will be getting points in the GT4 Ams. Niels Kula led the field though. Robin Knoll Brown, those 2 being championship contenders, were were close together right the way to the end of the race. It was Klaas Vellen who found himself on the podium, but 13 seconds back from the leading battle. He led home a pretty close race, it's fair to say, for that podium position, with the likes of Dean Sheesby and John Ludbrook fighting him out inside the top 5. Liam Fraser and Charlie Stoddard were 6th and 7th, and they had a bit of a gap back to the very close battle between Joseph Preston and Daniel Paul. It was only 500ths between the drivers for 8th and 9th. Running out the top 10 was Luke Bailey, who was just ahead of Rob Gregg and Edward Grobe as they found themselves inside the top 12. Matt Stace was 13th. Reese Kitley was on the lead lap in 14th. And Dennis Curler a long way down, 8 laps down. Didn't really get off the line at all. He will be 15th and he'll start right at the back of the field.
Next up then, we move over to the TCR Pro category. Only 10 drivers with us. And as we said, it will be a shame for Howarth, who will not score any points. So Andrew McKinley led the way across the line, 10 seconds ahead of Anthony Hilton. So that is P4. Andrew McKinley, who got that hat-trick of victories last week as well. So he too continues his fine run of form. Anthony Hilton finished behind him, ahead of Kevin Marshall, who gets himself on the podium for the first time this season. Keith Calhoun gets his best result of the season, ahead of Scott Malcolm, who also gets his best result of the season. Max Devonchani will finish in P6, ahead of Jay Corley and Jaden Scotton, with Logan McKinsey, the championship leader, all the way down there in P9. Only 1 lap down, though, so he will take the flag, and he will score some points.
He will. It wouldn't have been very good if only about 6 drivers there would have scored points, but I think a few more do. But good for Andrew McKinley either way. In the AMs for the TCRs, of course, Gordon Hales, the South African driver, winning out ahead of the Turkish Sarah Kadesla. Only 8 tenths between them, though. Going to be an enthralling battle between those two for the win in the 45-minute race. Mark Parkhurst and Jason Haddington were in a bit of a battle for P3, but it was Parkhurst who came out on top. Andrew Fellows was close by as well, as he finished inside the top 5. Rob Smith and Martin Kenyon finished on the lead lap, not too far back in 6th and 7th. Sadly for Dean Sargent and for Danny Weir. For Dean Sargent, at least he'll pick up the points for 8th, but for Danny Weir, 6 laps down, he will find himself too far away, and he won't be picking up any points at all for race number 1.
Well, there we have it then. 4 classes to get through, and it always nicely rounds off what we need. As we come to the close of that 5-minute warm-up, the drivers have had the opportunity to get some fluids on board. Maybe you can get some fluids off board, and they'll be back in the rig now, ready to go. It's a 45-minute race ahead of them tonight, the longest session that we've had in this championship so far this season. And remember, it's double points on offer with that 1 mandatory pit stop. So again, it's the first time that we'll see some strategy coming into play. The drivers can fuel, and then they will run out by the time well before they reach the checkered flag, and we'll see them coming at the pit stops. And as we've seen, Dara, in the past, that sometimes those 1, 2, 3 seconds that you can lose either by getting a bad entry or an exit to the pit lane or by over-fueling can really shift up the order, and then sometimes, it can change the contention of the championship.
Little moments in the pit lane, even if you miss your mark, spike just a tiny bit, can be so critical in the grand scheme of the race. So definitely something that everyone's going to have to be looking out for. And this is a championship that's going to be based off of fine margins. Coming into this race, we have the GT4 Pro category split by 7 points at the top. The TCR Pro split by 9. The TCR Am split by 7 as well. So incredibly fine margins, and drivers have to be on top of it right the way through this 45 minutes.
Yeah, and interestingly, with this race not having any of that reverse grid order, you would expect it to be normal service resume, but some of these guys will know that they are better in the long runs. It all comes down to tyre management. Make sure you don't overheat the brakes, don't overdo the tyres, trying to chase positions in the early laps, and of course, don't go for too many moves too soon. Just let the race come to you, get through that pit stop, and then in that final phase, you can really start to take the life out of the tyres. As we said, though, it's 47 drivers on the grid, starting in the order that they finish. Key battles to watch out for. Nils Culler and Robin Noah Brown, who finished very close to one another. We also saw Gordon Hales and Hussein Sarika Desla, the 2 championship rivals in that TCR Am class, finishing within a second of one another. So, while there might be some gaps between some drivers, we will definitely see some battles that will probably extend for the entirety of this race.
And hopefully we see 45 minutes worth of really high quality racing all the way through. But for William Humphrey, he's just going to be hoping to get away at the front. He's got 150 points at Road America. Wouldn't mind picking up 150 points here again. He's got 50 of those. And if he wins this race, 45 minutes long, he'll pick up the other 100 that he needs. But even so, the likes of Stephen Donnelly being up there helps him out, because it's taking points away from the likes of Ben Smith, who he's fighting with in the championship for the time being. Ben Smith, mind you, could put himself back into the lead of the championship by finishing ahead of William Humphrey in this race. That's pretty much all he needs to do. So, fine margins again, but drivers going to have to be thinking about how they deal with that race start once again.
Absolutely. So before the guys get to the end, I thought I'd mention quickly, I left a message in the chat earlier. I was interested who was going to be taking part in that Daytona 24 hours, arguably the #1 special event on the calendar every year here on iRacing. And, well, we've got a little bit of time. I thought I'd talk about that, because that will be, aside from the Thursday championship that we have, the GT3s, this will be the last race that some of these drivers will be taking part in before they have to sit down with their teammates and race for 24 hours straight. So we saw Yannis Aubert is bringing in Klaas Vellen for his first endurance race. That will be with 2 other friends, not competing in this championship. So it's interesting that Klaas has been brought in by someone like Yannis Aubert, a championship winner here at ESR, a guy who is more than familiar with every type, sprint races, endurance races. He's been there and done it all. He's pairing up with someone who's only a couple of months into his iRacing career. And I mean, Dara, what a start to go to Daytona for 24 hours in your first endurance race.
The thing I love most about iRacing special events like Daytona is that everybody can get involved. It doesn't really matter what split you're in. Everybody can get involved, and it is nice to see that we are getting these matchups. And you get these matchups, you get the same at Le Mans in the summer, even at Spa at the Nürburgring as well. Drivers that you wouldn't necessarily put together team up for the race, and it is great to see. I'm really interested to see how those guys go this weekend, and I am really looking forward to Daytona. Albeit, I'll also be looking forward to Daytona finishing. I think that's Rob Mackay going through the pit lane.
No, it's a JST. But I will be looking. Spa, actually.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Well, maybe he's trying to get up the order. But I'm looking forward to, seeing the 24 Daytona, but also seeing the back of Daytona, because I think everybody's going to be seeing quite a lot of it over the next week or two.
Yeah, totally right. This is another group to highlight, the flatline cars, who are entering a handful of drivers into that race as well. DXT will be there. Jason Haddington might be joining the DXT flatline battle, depending on when they are racing. Up to 15 or 16 guys got in touch to talk about that. I'm not sure if the Am drivers are doing anything. The question was asked, but yeah, no one got back to me, and I will be alongside Dale Williams and William Humphrey and Matthew Jones. Nick Stubb, our team, will be there as well, so it'll be really nice if we see a couple of these guys on that grid. But for now, we've got this grid to contend with, and once again, it's William Humphrey who will lead them across the line. Let's see if he handles it in a similar way as he did last time. He left it pretty late last time out, a pretty big gap back there in the midfield. Williams gone now, and again, he's got a pretty good launch off the line, leaving those guys battling for second place. Could be 3 or 4 cars involved very shortly. One of the KXR cars just going out of the grass, and then a huge gap back with the TCR cars. There's a mixture of the two classes here. There's Francois Brandet in that lonesome GT4, who's going to have to dice it in with the TCRs. Everyone seems to have got away okay, and back toward the front, it's Adam Atherton who's under the most pressure at the moment, sniffing up the inside of Klaas Vellen, who's not going to give this one up as they head through the snake section for the first time. It's Humphreys leads Smith, leads Donnelly and Albert ahead of Hibner, the top 5 in the Pro class. Nils Culler and Robin Moore Brown still side by side in the GT4 Am class.
Yeah, I was slightly worried for Klaas Vellen there. I think he was going to go around, which would have been apt considering I think his livery is a Dunkin' Donuts livery. It would have been apt if he found himself spinning around on the opening lap, but luckily enough for him, he will continue onwards and try and chase after the likes of Kula and Noel Browns. What's happened to Stephen Donnelly, though? He's tumbling down the order. Ooh. There's smoke. Oh, there's Donnelly on the inside line. That is not where he wants to be. He's off the racing line now, but that's gutting for Steve, and because he ran up right at the front of this race. Big points looked like they were incoming. But now that car, you can see the front light is off the ground. That looks absolutely horrific at the moment.
Yeah, that car has seen better days. I think somebody made contact with him, sadly, while he was sat stationary, unable to go anywhere. We'll jump back to that in a moment. But for now, though, as we said, Humphrey's done well to get away off the line, just over half a second ahead of Ben Smith, who again will fancy his chances now to put the pressure on. That's a Camé car around, and another Mercedes going sideways across the circuit. They've both stayed off the track at the moment. It's Robin Noel Brown and was it Jacob Jenner perhaps? I'm not sure. Yes, Jacob Jenner I think it was, who's off the circuit. There's another Mercedes, that's Klaas Vellen, who's coming into the pit lane. Might be wise to try and do that fuel stop now if he can. I'm not sure if he'll hit the maximum fuel capacity by pitting this early on, but if you do have an incident at the start of the race, it is a good time to come in, take a breather and get back on the track, see if you can do the overcut on any of those drivers and take them later. Hussein Sarkadesla has got the move done on Gordon Hales. In fact, no, he hasn't. Gordon's just snuck back around the outside and retaken that place. It seemed like a little bit of chaos for those TCRs. In fact, Darryl, you won't believe this, already we have 9 TCR cars in the pit lane.
Yeah, you can see the amount of AMs that are down there. We have TCR Am cars in the pit lane at the moment. Jason Haddington is having a whale of a time. He's last in the train, but he's first. Well, he's fourth on the road. Let's see what happened to Martin Kenyon in the DXT. Oh, he may be going for a bit of early Yorkshire.
Oh my God.
Oh my word! That really did. Wow, that did escalate. Let's see if we can see it up further. This is Danny Weir's point of view. Oh my lord! There's nothing you can do there.
No, we've seen that once before at Road America. I think it was Ashley Brooks who went into the barrier at Canada Corner, and the car, as it did there, you know, unrealistically springboarded itself back across the circuit. And I mean, nothing that Kenyon could do there. Got himself on the grass, lost it, went the right way off the track, but then getting catapulted back on the circuit. Nothing Danny Weir could really do to even predict that one coming, never mind avoid it. I was thinking that might have been the crash involving Stephen Donnelly, but it wasn't, so I'm not sure who came in the back of him. But yeah, very unrealistic behaviour there on the game. And of course, as we saw earlier, Robert Noel Brown off the circuit at this point, last lap. That leaves Noel's colour very clear at the moment of this pack. Oh, and that's going to leave this pack even further clear as Jacob, it's not Jacob, that's Charlie Stothard and Joseph Preston getting all mixed up. And yeah, I don't think Charlie really fancied coming off the throttle there, and in the end he's caused a bit of a meal for himself. Rejoins on the exit of turn 1, spins again. Oh, he's got to be careful at this rejoin, gets himself off the circuit, and will get going once again.
I don't quite know how no one's hit Charlie Stothard in either one of those incidents. He came back across the circuit towards turn 1. Miracle that he wasn't collected in there. I'm surprised that everybody was able to duck and dive around him, but good to see that everybody else is staying as clean as can be. As I mean, you know, the TCR Am category is pretty jumbled up at the moment. Some of the gaps are not what you'd expect after only being in the race for 5 minutes, but no surprise to see the likes of Danny Weir right towards the back after the kind of incident that we saw. Jacob Bonner creating new lines on the racetrack, and by doing so, I think he'll overtake one of the the GT4 Am drivers. I'm not sure who that is. G-Speed then, not inside the top 10.
Well, it's actually
why when I was looking.
Yeah, it's actually P11 versus P11, ironically, in the two GT4 classes. So both of them out of the order a little bit. But yeah, oh, and there's a car off there. One of the Hondas, I'm not sure who that was. Jay Corley, perhaps, sitting on the left-hand side of the circuit. Sarika Desla has fallen by the wayside slightly. He's got Keith Calhoun pushing him down the back straight here. Of course, Hussein in the Am class. Keith, I'm not sure if he fancies himself getting by. Hussein will move over to defend that inside line. You'd think that Keith would want to get himself by with him being in the Pro class. There's an Audi off the circuit. That's Anthony Hilton, who's gone off as well. Scott Malcolm passes him around the outside. And that's a rejoin by the Audi, staying well out the way.
Yeah, and I think we've got the DXT, the Yorkshire T DXT rejoining the circuit, the number 1 of Martin Kenyon. He has had a horrible start to the race, and I think he's coming down pit lane again. Maybe he's staying out. No, he's staying out, in fact, and Danny Weir now right on his tail. Those two, are down towards the back after their incident a little earlier on in this race, but they're still involved in the race, so in with a shout of picking up some points. And with it being a 45-minute race, you can be a couple of laps down, probably more like 3, maybe even 4 laps down, and still collect your points for the race. So definitely chances, even if you're not necessarily right towards the sharp end, the drivers will want to pick up points because some of them won't be here for every single race, and so they want to use those races where they don't attend as their drop rounds. They won't really want to feel like they turned up for a race and almost wasted the opportunity.
Yeah, catching on board with the guys at the front. The field kind of died down a little bit after the first 8 or 9 minutes or so. But the battle here at the front of the field between the two GT4 Pro Class Championship leaders more or less heating up. I mean, there's definitely not settling down at the front. A tenth of a second separating these two Porsches at the moment. William Humphrey leading Ben Smith. It's interesting to see the difference of lines. We've got a TCR car ahead. He's not going to want to get out of the way. That's Dean Sargent. Humphrey's going to use him as a little bit of a slipstream. Comes back outside. That might have helped his efforts ever so slightly. Ben Smith not going to be in the position to make a move into turn 1 on the brakes nice and early, nice and safely. If he can stay with Humphrey for now, see what he can do around the pit window. But this battle will continue. We didn't get a chance to see this as Ben was caught up battling other drivers in that first race, but this is one of those battles that will definitely, I'm sure, will continue for the next 36 minutes maybe a little bit less, but it'll definitely continue for the large majority of this feature.
Yeah, a long way left we still have to go, of course. So drivers who have been able to keep it clean off the start really now are going to have to try and dial into the race and dial into try and get themselves into a nice rhythm, if that is possible at a circuit such as this. If you like William Humphrey and Ben Smith and got a little bit of clean air, that could be possible. But in these battles where you're down with Jaden Scott and Anthony Hilton, Scott Malcolm, that's going to be far more difficult to achieve. Rob Gregg and John Ludbrook have dropped down the order. Something's happened to John Ludbrook. He's out of the race. So really bad events have happened to those two. We may have to see what happened there. Joseph Preston now tumbling down the order. I don't know what's happened to the 2-4-1, but Preston and Gregg and Ludbrook having an awful time in the GT4 round. It has just been about 9 minutes of real attrition as there's more cars off the circuit in front.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to be the one for Ludbrook. No, it's just in the pit lane, so we'll allow that and skip over that. No incidents to report in quite some time. And yeah, been a pretty tricky start. We kind of knew that this circuit would throw up some difficulties, and of course, thank God that we've stayed dry, made that decision in the middle of last week. That's Matt Stace off the circuit in that Porsche. He's reset to the pit lane as well. He was in P8 in the GT4 Am class. So much to deal with here. Noel Brown, the championship protagonist, goes off the circuit to try and make that move stick. Jacob Jenner in the Pro class sneaking on by once again. I'm not sure if that was a little bit eager by Noel Brown. In the end, no contact was made though, so all's well that ends well. But yeah, it's really a bit frantic. This circuit kind of, well, it's indicative of this kind of circuit. The grass doesn't help. Skidding across the grass, obviously barriers kind of far away, but having distant barriers when it springboards you back across the circuit's no use either. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing so many drivers under blue flags or out of the race already.
Yeah, it really has been a bit of a clamour in the first 10 minutes of this race, and drivers just having to pick their way through for the time being. One of those drivers being Adam Atherton, but he's on the back of Jeremy Ulemans and Yanis Ulber in the battle for P for the GT4 Pros, unsurprisingly having the closest battles on the circuit, considering that every other category has been caught up a bit in some of the incidents that we've seen so far. Atherton, is he going to go for a move at turn 11? No, going to think better of it as they make their way into the important exit zone of turn 12. And it's a very good exit there from Jeremy on his attempts to get past Yanis Ulber. Let's see how close he can get down in towards the roller coaster and whether he's close enough to make a move. Got to rise the crest first, but if you're in a slipstream, rising up that hill is going to feel ever easier with every passing lap.
Yeah, remember, cars getting lighter and lighter, although the tyres will wear down. Oh, great on the brakes there by Atherton. Close that gap on Ulemans, who has to be careful not to run into the back of Ulber. At the moment, it's kind of one up for Atherton. He can kind of sit behind. He's got a little bit of pressure, actually, from Nils Kuller behind him, and then we've got a huge 10-second gap down to Laurent Uden, so no pressure really for these four drivers. Just have to navigate one another, but they don't have to worry about the other cars backing into them. William Humphrey has just set his best lap time, but that was swiftly beaten by Ben Smith, who takes the fastest lap of the race. Both of them doing 52.4s at the moment, just 3/100ths of a difference between the two men leading the field at the moment. I'm glad those guys are going hell for leather, because sadly, up and down the rest of the order, we've got a battle on for P3 in the Am class, which we may as well take a look at now while we're talking. But sadly, it's pretty big gaps, 5 seconds in the TCR group, and nobody really within 5 seconds of each other at all in the TCR Am class. So GT4 is doing quite well to stay in touch with one another, but it seems to have been a pretty tricky start for the vast majority of those TCR drivers. I wonder what's made the difference.
Well, a lot of the TCR drivers are a long way off the lead. I wonder, is it possible, Joe, to show an overall tower on the left-hand side with the gap to leader?
Of course.
Let's see, because it's going to be quite stark. There you go. There's a lot of drivers that are a long way off, and a lot further off than they'd like to be, I'm sure. Look at McKinsey's dropping down the field as well. This is Daniel Poole fighting it out. But this also shows how mixed it is between all of the classes apart from the front of the GT4 Pros. You've got from the Ams and the Pros really mixing it up, and in the TCR, the Ams and the Pros mixing it up as well. Really is just a bit chaotic at the moment in all of these battles, but it's great to see so many names on the tower, keeping us busy this evening, and listen, we're never going to be short of action.
No, absolutely right, and we've got a bit of action here, and of course, actually, can't forget about these guys right at the front. Ben Smith really making it difficult for Humphrey. They're starting to encroach on that TCR traffic. William has to be careful as he navigates these drivers. Of course, we ask the TCRs not to get in the way, especially when you've got two of the fastest men in the championship coming by you, and they do well at the moment to get past Rob Smith in that flat line. Hyundai, now they make the way through the snake section for the 7th time. They're going to be able probably to get themselves up toward the south end of the track at turn 12. A flash of the headlights just to make sure that the TCR has seen them ahead. This is going to be Reese Kitley, who's currently in P11 in the TCR Am class, out of the standings at the moment. And yes, let's see, it should be an easy pass for these drivers as they make their exit out of turn 12. Very late on the brakes by Smith, who was maybe short-sighted there by Humphrey ahead, who navigated himself past that TCR machine. Has that allowed Smith to get a run? Let's check and see. No, he's not gaining on that Porsche ahead at all, really, on the run down toward that tricky roller coaster section. But as we said 3 or 4 laps ago, Dara, this is definitely going to continue throughout the rest of this race. And as we say, I'm not sure how much fuel these guys start the race with, but that's definitely going to play a factor toward the end of this race. Other battles to keep an eye out on is for that P2 spot in the GT4 Am class between Bailey and Poole, and then for that final podium place on the TCR Pro class between Malcolm and Scott.
Malcolm and Scott will be fighting that one out, I'm sure, over the coming laps. Battle between Noel Brown and Grover. This is getting very dicey down in towards the roller coaster. Inside line for Robin Noel Brown in the blue and orange car with the light blue wheel rim. It's very easy to spot Robin Noel Brown. He'll dive down the hill now up into P4. Daniel Poole will be his next target. Let's see how long it takes him to try and negotiate his way back through. It's just going to be concerning for Robin Noel Brown that Niels Kula is pretty much running the race at whatever pace he so chooses at the moment. Kula looking to get his 5th win of the season in the first 7 races if he was to be able to close it out here. In the first 3 rounds of the championship, he could pick up 380 points, I'm sorry to say, for everybody else in the field, because that's quite something to try and overturn going forward throughout the season.
It is, and I just want to highlight this at the moment, the live gap between the leaders of the Am class. You can just see, well, you could see a moment ago, that tiny blue blob all the way back there at the other side of the circuit is Sarika Desler, who's 4.5 seconds away from the leader. Pretty tight, pretty big margin to overcome. Another one to keep our eyes on as the guys make their way through the pit lane. To be honest, that's another gap that is impossible to overcome if we can manage fuel, and if some guys want to risk things a little bit more by filling up by a litre or 2 less than their rivals. That can really be the difference in even a second or two with such a slight marginal change. And of course, depending on how these drivers are racing, some of these could be saving more fuel just naturally by the way that they drive. And so, for example, Sarika Desler might have to fill up that car less than Hales, and that could really help to reduce that margin, which is encroaching 5 seconds now. Not to say that it will, but these are the small factors that really play a big part in this overall strategy. And as I saw, there's both of those TCR cars follow each other off the circuit there. I'm quite interested to see what that one looked like. Let's see how they both followed each other off the circuit. Slightly blinded, I would imagine, was the Audi in behind Fellows. It's contact. It is contact. They both, well, the Audi, just a slight rear shunt on the back of Fellows, who bounce over the circuit. Gordon gets himself through, and Andrew rejoins as best he can. Minor contact there. It's a shame that the position wasn't returned, and the Audi there has set away Kevin Marshall, say, out of class. Of course, it's actually a blue flag. Oh, there goes Kevin Marshall, say, in the barrier. But yeah, who was it there? Andrew Fellows was actually a blue flag.
Well, that's not ideal for entry follows at all. But some drivers are facing these kinds of moments. Blue flag, particularly for a lot of the drivers around the circuit. Joseph Preston is facing a challenge to get through on Charlie Stoddart to get himself inside the top 9 in the GT4 Am category. Preston in that very ominous looking Mercedes, a lot flatter and wider than the Porsche. Charlie Stoddart's going to be driving on his mirrors through the final corner, but it looks like Stoddart's got a good enough exit that he'll be able to defend down in towards turn 1, but at a circuit like Virginia, you can never count your chickens. I looked at the sun there, and I almost actually got a spot in my eye from an in-sim sun on my computer screen, which is how bright that is as they go down in towards turn 1. I hope some of the drivers aren't seeing that on their screens as they run towards the opening corner.
Yeah, it looks like the sun on the Teletubbies. This needs a smiley face. There was a little something on the sun there. I'm not quite sure what it was, but yeah, there was a little blob on that sun. But yeah, should be impairing the drivers, I would imagine, as well as they head through that run. It's probably, I think, it's the only corner on the circuit that will head to the east, which will be a pretty blind braking zone for some of these guys. The rest of the corners, the sun will be right behind them, lighting the way as they enter the braking zone. Pretty close battles on track, and I wanted to make a note of this man, Adam Atherton, who was the first driver inside the top 20 to have been in the pit lane already. He served a 12-second stop to refuel, and so he's the first to pull the trigger. Maybe that was forced by a mistake or maybe some damage or something, but yeah, interesting that he's still riding nicely inside the top 9 in class, but he's already been into the pit lane.
Yeah, so definitely interesting to see what Adam Atherton can do throughout the rest of this race, whether he's just kind of lying in the long grass or whether he won't promote himself up too much further up the order. We'll keep an eye on that, no doubt about that, and we'll see how he can work his way through in the Ignium Spark car. I have to say I do quite like the Ignium livery with the blue and the white. I think it looks pretty nice. It looks like a couple of esports liveries as well that we may be seeing in some of the top splits of the Daytona 24 this coming weekend, but for the time being, he's going to get through on Jacob Jenner, who almost blends into a dark forest, isn't he?
He does, yeah. It's a pretty, stark colour to choose, but there's so much greenery around the circuit. Get yourself a green car and you go camouflage. And I was going to say, Dara, there when you mentioned Daytona, you couldn't really find a circuit that's further away from the characteristics of Daytona. Such a long, winding oval circuit with that road section. But yeah, this is a completely different ball game around the outside. Looks the blue and white Mercedes against the green and black Mercedes. Gets that move done. What a great move, actually, that was by Adam Atherton. Obviously, is it in class or out of class? That is an in-class move, so well done. Adam gets himself up into P8. Let's take a look at that one once again from the chopper. A little bit of an inside line unnecessarily by the green Mercedes ahead. Misses the apex. That allows Adam to get the run, but around the outside, late on the brakes, committed, and gets himself tucked in ahead of Jacob before they even turn in to turn 12, and says, I'll see you in a bit, mate. See if you can catch him by the end of the straight. Something tells me that he won't have, and there we go. The gap that we left them at is the gap now. Half a second. Great move by Adam Atherton, and potentially another move on the offing between two more Mercedes. This time it's Edward Grobe and Liam Fraser who are battling for P5 in the Am class. Liam Fraser doing okay at the moment. He's doing even better in the championship, currently in the top 3, so really needs to ensure that he brings home some strong points, and he's 2/10 behind some even better points. As we said, he had that one poor round in the middle of the 3 races around Road America last time out, but aside from that, hasn't finished outside the top 4, so he will be as eager as anybody to try and get himself past Mr. Grove ahead, back into his favourite top 4 position.
And of course these two Mercedes fighting it out between each other. The top 3 currently in the Am category, all Porsches, so I think either Grove or Fraser wouldn't mind changing that up in the coming minutes. Halfway through the race, though, we've passed the 22.5 minute mark. We're into the second half of this race, and with 100 points on the line, some of these battles, I'm sure, are going to get a little bit frantic. William Humphrey, Ben Smith, the only leading battle of any note for the time being coming down to 0.6 of a second, but this is an even closer battle, coming down to pretty much door-to-door, wheel-to-wheel racing. Me and Fraser outside line. Edward Grove, they get ever so close, and then they get a little bit further away, almost scare each other off their own lines, but the Moonshiners car, the 274 of Liam Fraser, gets to the inside first at Roller Coaster, and Fraser up into P4. Can he try and pull away? Can he chase after Robin L. Brown?
Yeah, very good note to make there. He's very close, actually. No, he's not, sorry. He's 6 seconds ahead. It did look like he was pretty close for a moment there. Nils Culler, though, look at that, absolutely checking out of his category. 17 seconds ahead, only at half race distance. Francois Brandet with a little bit of a push through turn 1 there by Luke Bailey, currently in P2 in the Am class. And Luke has to be careful because he's opened the door there to Robin Noel Brown, who we've seen definitely has the pace. Noel Brown will be forced to go the long way around, but switches it back. What a great move that is. Late onto the inside line, but Luke says no thank you and he switches it back. Once again, a great battle between the two of these. However, Noel Brown, having been on the outside line, doesn't look like he has actually, but I was going to say should have a better run up the hill, but he doesn't. But that was a great sequence of corners between the drivers, battling it out for that P2 spot. As we said, the leader in class has absolutely checked out, running away with it now, 19 seconds clear. But these two getting pretty feisty with some TCR traffic to deal with ahead as well.
Yeah, they're not going to be leaving each other alone, that's for sure, as they run their way throughout the second half of this race. Really important race, I think, in the grand scheme of the championship, to get a good haul of points in, not least because of the confidence going into the next few rounds, but to have a good tally of points after 3 rounds can be really critical. We're not going to be too far away from looking at taking away the points that will have been dropped by some of these drivers, and all of a sudden the championships could look very different just by taking away some points that some of the drivers have earned. For example, in the TCR Pro, Andrew McKinley, of course, will be dropping the opening round at Zolder, where he scored 0 points. Jaden Scotland scored 90 points in that event, and as it stands coming into this race, there's only 32 points between them. So the championship's going to change around, and I think mentally, for some of the drivers to have a good haul of points early on, it's going to help them out throughout the rest of the season, because they're not necessarily going to be chasing those big results and not going to be forcing themselves into some little mistakes like we've seen so far this evening.
Oh, absolutely right, and those mistakes, they've got to be really careful at this point of the race. Again, we're going to see some of those drivers darting into the pit lane very shortly. It's all eyes on the race leaders at the moment. William Humphrey has somewhat dropped Ben Smith off the back of him. 2 seconds now. That battle was going on for some time. I wonder if Smith has maybe had a little excursion over the grass. I'm not sure if that's going to be flat out pace, because those guys were pretty similarly matched for most of that opening stint. Maybe a slight mistake by Ben in behind. Nothing on the timing sheet though, so that's just me purely assuming. Sadly though, gaps are pretty big now up and down the grid. This is pretty much the only battle that we have for any points of significance. Last laps for these two drivers, it was a 56, wow, it was a 56.30 and a 56.29, so best part of only 100th of a second separating these two Porsche drivers at the moment. Of course, being in the fixed setup, these cars will be behaving identically to one another in the corners and down the straights, so they've really got to use their own ability on the brakes to try and outsmart their opponent. Get in his mirrors, trying some different lines and try and find that grip, see if you can put some pressure on that KXR machine ahead to snip up those extra few points on offer. We've crossed over the 20-minute mark now, just under 18 minutes to go, and Dara, it's only going to be a matter of time before the guys come in the pit lane. I can't imagine those fuel tanks have an awful lot left.
No, neither can I, and I think drivers are really going to be running on empty, but they don't want to pit in earlier than they necessarily have to and put themselves into a part of the circuit they don't want to be, my word. Luke Bailey getting through, but here comes Robin Noel Brown, the TCR. I don't know whether he thought he knew where he was going or anybody else did either, but Noel Brown's going to go the long way around the outside. You'd have to get up very early to make it all the way around the outside. That's why he's going to switch to the inside line. It's a late dive from Robin Noel Brown. There's maybe the slight stick on type, but Noel Brown can't quite get it done. They'll run through the snake. with Noel Brown still in P3, but you've got to rate the attempts there from Noel Brown. It was clean, it was aggressive, but it hasn't just quite come off for him yet. Luke Bailey holding firm.
Yeah, great piece of driving by the pair of them there, side by side for a good handful of corners. This time round though, Robert Noel Brown does have a little bit of a run up the hill, but it's a bit sketchy when you reach this part of the circuit. Brakes nice and early. He allows Luke to just get away ever so slightly, but yes, very respectful racing, very close racing, and good to see that netcode didn't have a part to play, and that's something that we haven't seen too much this season, which is always nice to see. And we've got a battle here between Keith Calhoun chasing after Anthony, who comes across late. Slight movement there, maybe not moving under braking as such, but yeah, tricky for that Audi to really predict. It's Anthony Hilton on Scott Malcolm. Keith Calhoun is that second Ignium Blaze machine in behind. We haven't seen an awful lot of these guys just yet. We have a few more drivers inside the top 20 now in the pit lane. Sparrow's been in, Bonner's been in, Preston Stothard's been in, McKinsey and Scott have been in twice actually. Oh no, they haven't. Who's that who's been in twice? Stothard and McKinsey been in twice. McKinsey still in P2 though in his class, so that kind of goes a long way of saying how the TCRs have had a bit of a nightmare at some point, considering you can enter the pit lane twice as the Audi looks to go around the outside. The Honda's having none of it, and here comes his teammate. Oh my god, I was for sure that he was going to go off the circuit there. It looked almost guaranteed. The Audi backs out just in time, and the two Ignium cars can now drive off into the distance as they head through the snake once again.
Yeah, holding hands, singing lovely songs as they run away in front. They are going through some lovely meadows, aren't they? Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Keith Calhoun, though, will hopefully run away in this battle. Scott Malcolm should be able to come with him as well. Hilton, they'll be hoping, drops off the back of the order, but he'll be doing everything he can. You can just see him wrestling the car through turn 10 to keep himself in contention for this race. Inside line for Keith Calhoun now. He's going to get the move done on Scott Malcolm. Anthony Hilton is now directly involved in this battle. There's almost nothing to separate these three as they run down in towards the roller coaster. Got to be careful as well though, because we've got one of the GT4s. I think that is I can't remember who that is. That's it, Klaus Velen in P11 running through, and he has got a little bit more pace by being in a GT4. He's just got nowhere to go to use it.
Yeah, boxed in there. I thought he was going to try and send it 3 wide at the inside. Thought better of it, a little bit wide there by that Scott Malcolm, I think. Maybe no, it was Keith who went a little bit wide. Malcolm has taken that position, and there's Anthony Hilton gone, making slight contact in the barrier, and the front end of that car has seen better days. At least that one didn't springboard him across the circuit. While that was all going on, the third of the Ignium Blaze drivers, the leader in the TCR Pro category, has been in the pit lane. It was an 11.18 stationary stop, 36.5 seconds spent in the pit lane overall, but he rejoins the circuit still in the lead of the race. That is because Logan McKenzie and Jaden Scott in the top 3 have also been in the pit lane. So the top 3 in the GCR Pro class have all served their mandatory pit stop. However, we still await for the top 11 across both of our GT4 categories to come into the pit lane. That might have something to do with the fuel capacity differences between these two classes.
And it's going to be interesting, I think, to see when and how some of these drivers decide to use their pit strategies in the GT4s, because we're getting to a stage where there really is quite a thin pit window, because with 30 minutes left, we've got 7 laps remaining in this race, so not a lot of time for drivers to chop and change with what they want to do on the strategy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a mass exodus onto the pit lane. But at the front of the GT4s, it looks like Ben Smith is going to blink first, and William Humphrey is going to have to do a bit of an overcut here. If Ben Smith can do an undercut, we may have a change for the lead.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that as Humphrey crosses the line again. I wonder if that's a little bit of a premature pit stop, or if these guys have really taken that fuel tank all the way to the end. And a note on those TCR cars as well. I'm pretty sure, you know, the expected race durations are around half an hour for those cars, so they might really struggle on the tyres come the end of it. I don't have tyre information on my tower, as Is that Hussein? No, that's another car. Blue flag coming back into the pit lane. But yeah, I think the tyres, you need to be pretty critical, pretty conservative on those tyres, even with a half an hour race. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys in the TCR fare when in this part of the race. Just under 12 minutes to go. It's absolutely flown by so far this evening. But yeah, that's just one thing to note. William Humphrey is just halfway across the lap. Ben Smith back out on the circuit, just leaving the first sector now. He had a stationary stop of 13.87. So let's see if Humphrey ends up having a 15-second stop. We could see a battle for the lead of the race inside the final 10 minutes. And the GT4 car here, keen to get by that DXT Yorkshire 2 livery ahead. I'm not quite sure who that is, but I'm sure he'll make a move going into turn 12. If not, he'll get him on the straight. Upcoming here, is he going to go for it? Yes, he is. Rooms left by the number 1 of Martin Kenyon, and that now allows Ben Smith to really get the hammer down. Humphrey is in the pit lane, so let's ride on board with him, see what his stationary stop time is, and crucially see where Ben Smith is on track when he makes his way toward pit exit.
Yeah, for Ben Smith, he really can't afford to beat around the bush and get caught up behind the likes of Martin Kenyon. He had to get that move done on the entry to the corner. He couldn't have his exit compromised. That could be the difference here between coming out in the lead and not. Ben Smith, you can see him gaining as that gap in terms of the distance comes down to the likes of Yanis, to the likes of William Humphrey, who is still stationary in his pit box. He's going to emerge now. He's going to be well in the lead. It's going to be some distance, actually, between Humphrey and Ben Smith. I don't even think it's going to be close at all. Could be up towards 5, 6, 7 seconds here.
Yeah, well, Humphrey has actually lost time. He lost 6 or 7 tenths narrowly, but yeah, you're right. Ben Smith, maybe, did he get held up a little bit? His last lap was a 56.9. His best lap was a 52.3. So his outlap, obviously that will be inclusive of the pit exit time as well. But let's see what Humphrey's outlap time is. I don't have Smith's in-lap time, but yeah, that could have been costly perhaps. Even just that momentary traffic in behind Kenyon in the TCR could have cost him even a second there, and that may have just sealed the victory for Humphrey. If he can keep it out of trouble, he's gaining and gaining on that flatline racing car, gets himself past nicely up the inside before they reach that turn 11-12 section, and now he's got some pretty clean air ahead to head down that back straight. So it looks like it's just been played into the hands of Humphrey for the time being. Let's see what his outlap time is, and we can maybe see where that difference has come from.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to see generally that we've got a lot of cars still circulating on the circuit. Of course, we had that chaos down in the TCR Ams right off of the start, which cost a lot of the drivers any kind of contention, any kind of chance of winning this race. But they're still all involved, and they all should pick up points from where they are. They may be a couple of laps down, but they are still right in contention, still to picking up some decent points as we close out today. Humphrey, though, going for the full 100, and he's just going to be trying to tick off the laps, tick off these TCRs that are going to be in his way a touch as he runs towards the line. 8 minutes 35. I think we've got about 5 laps to go. Actually, we will have 5 laps to go, Joe.
Yeah, so Humphrey gained not only... he lost 7 tenths in the pit lane, but he gained 8 tenths in the outlap, so he's netted overall, just about netted that pit stop. And Marius Hibner has just... oh no, he just disconnected for a moment. He's back on the podium. So Humphrey has done well through that pit stop transition, just about 5 seconds ahead of Smith, and I'm sure those two will hold station for the remainder of this race. Dean Sheesby, what a drive he's had. Where is he on the circuit? He's gained... that would be because he's just entering the pit lane now, so that was not a genuine P2. Let's see where Dean comes out as he makes his first pit stop of the session. In fact, he's the last driver on the circuit to make a pit stop, so he's really stretched that 3.8 litre engine of his Porsche all the way until the end of that stint. He'll stay stationary for about 15 seconds and he'll make his way back on track. P6 at the moment. Daniel Poole is coming around the final couple of corners And let's see if he can pip Sheesby to the line on pit exit. It will probably be quite tight here, although I think Dean might have just got himself away. Yes, he has. Back up to racing speed. You can see them just about to enter the picture there behind the timing tower, and he has got himself ahead. Stays in P6, which is a great result for the Moonshining Racing Club 252 machine at the moment. And yeah, with that 30-second gap in behind, I'm sure that he's going to hold on to that position in the final 7 minutes of this race, as that is someone off the circuit there. Jacob Bonner has taken a trip onto the grass, and he has to wait for a clean entry to rejoin.
Maybe a little lapse in concentration. I mean, we've been going nearly 40 minutes in this race. It can happen for some of the drivers. Look, Bailey had to defend. I was going to mention this battle actually between Bailey, Fraser and Grove, because this is for the podium positions. These are for some really big points. 80 points it'll be for P3. So a massive haul and really important to fight over is kind of advantage. Bailey, Fraser and Grove as well coming into this race. Bailey P5 in the championship, Fraser P4 in the championship, Grove down in P9. So you'd argue that Edward looking for these points a little bit more than the other two, but for Luke and Liam in their own little battle, I think they'll know that they're in contention at least for a top 3, and with John Ludbrook not being anywhere to be seen in this top 10 battle, they'll both be promoted up a position. So this is now a battle for realistically P3 in the championship. It's going to be interesting to see if the races run slightly differently because of that in the final 6 minutes with only what should be 4 laps to go.
Yeah, an interesting, very harsh over to the right hand side there by Fraser, but a very interesting battle that we have on our hands at the moment. The Porsche surrounded there by those 3 Mercedes, the 2 manufacturers that are the most popular choice in this championship in the GT4 category. Of course, the Mercedes with that front engine really gets the nose in pretty good in the corners. That Porsche though, nice and nimble, a little bit more lightweight, so definitely good to watch these battles going on. The speed difference won't be all that good. I think the Porsche will have a slightly quicker straight line speed, albeit that Mercedes with that beast of a V8 engine in its hood will be putting pressure all over the back. Here he is going almost alternate lines through a snake section, which is pretty tricky to do when he's so close to making contact there with the Porsche ahead. Remember, quite a lot at stake in this battle. Edward Grove is in there as well. Oh, and there is contact. Was that with the TCR, Dara? I was looking away, but the 2 Mercedes in behind this Porsche battling for the final place on the podium in the GT4 Am class, and with so little time to go, whoever can hang on to that for the next couple of laps will probably stay there when we reach the checkered flag.
Really is hard fought, isn't it, for the podium, and rightly so. At this stage of the season with the points on the line, and it is good to see that Luke Bailey and Liam Fraser are both going to be going at it to get themselves up into P2. We're going to see what happens though down at turn 11 and 12 once again. Adam Atherton, this is going for an inside move. It's not going to work out well for him. Little bit of contact, and the slightest bit of contact can send you around, and he's going to get collected as well. That's not going to do his rear right too much favour. I got reversed into a little bit like that last week, and I think it did a little more damage than what happened to me, so I'm not too sure how well Adam Atherton's going to do, and I think I've just seen him in the pit lane briefly.
Ah, really? Well, that's a shame. We were singing his praises earlier on. He was riding high, and now, well, P8 at the moment, I think he's still on track. Yes, he is still on track. Just crossed over the start-finish line on what is lap 21 of this feature race. The drivers will be getting pretty tired now. It's only an hour's racing, no matter what we do here at ESR, but when you go for so long, you're going to have so much concentration with the strategy. It's this time when the mind and the shoulders start giving out on you a little bit. So hopefully we don't see anyone lax on the brakes. Speaking of lax on the brakes, that was somewhat pretty late by Charlie Stothard, who has got himself past Daniel Poole, who gets himself nicely out the way of that one. Doesn't really want to be involved with that. This is for P7 in that Am class, so it's all kicking off at the moment in this particular category. Up and down the rest of the field though, looking at those, oh god, that was close, and wow, Daniel has taken avoiding action there, coming in pretty hot, and in the end he's actually cost himself not only a spin but some front right damage there. The final 2 minutes of a race, not what you want to see.
No, for drivers so close to the end, it really is gutting for anything to go wrong, especially when you work so hard in the first 42 minutes of the race for it all to go wrong in the final 3. It's never a nice sight. But these are the kind of things that happen in motorsport championships, and being able to recover from these is what makes real champions in ESR. We really have seen. We've seen drivers come back from difficult starts to a season to coming home with a championship, and we still are in the early stages. 10 weeks, of course, this championship, running at Longreach, Sebring, Kota, Imola, Mugello, Bathurst, and at Brands Hatch as well. There is so much opportunity for these drivers to still pick up some really good results. They just have to try and find it throughout the rest of the season, and I think a lot of these drivers will back themselves to get a good result later on in the season. And for some drivers, even if they don't get a good result today, some of their pace will give them hope going into the next few rounds.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you say those words of Brands Hatch, and that will be one hell of a season finale. A tight and technical circuit with these multi-class cars will be really difficult for some of these guys. I'm sure we'll be close here to the checkered flag. A minute and a half to go. I'm in two minds about whether William Humphrey is going. There will be one more lap after this. William Humphrey is close enough to the end of the circuit now. We should see the man with the banner in a moment waving that white flag to confirm the last lap of the race. There he is. Then he is waving the flag, so this will be the final lap of the race. Adam Atherton has done all right to cling on to that top 8 spot at the moment, but this is the battle that we left earlier on. It's the final place on that podium. It's really the only position that we have for some significant points left to be decided. These guys will of course go once again, I think, because they haven't crossed over the checkered flag yet, so this will not be the last lap for these drivers. Liam Fraser has momentarily got himself ahead, but he's on the outside line crucially, and I'm sure Luke Bailey is not going to back out of this one.
No, Luke Bailey will want to make sure that he keeps his foot in, and nearly getting close, but getting close, but not quite close enough to make a move as they dip their way in towards the final corner for the penultimate time. Penultimate time. He has got one more tour of this circuit to get it done, but it's far easier said than done as we run our way towards the line once again for what will be the final time with any kind of consideration into turn number 1. A whole line of GT4s greets us as we cross onto the final lap, and Liam Fraser leads them. I think he'll be hoping that he leads them come the end of the race.
Absolutely right. This cluster's been all over the back of each other for quite some time. Even Edward Grove down there could fancy his chances if there's any mistakes upcoming. And I just want to answer a quick question in the chat. Oh, Rob's just done it for me. Yeah, the red names on the timing tower show the driver who was a lap ahead of the driver that we're currently looking at. Same can be said for the blue. That is the drivers who are lapped out. And so, yeah, Liam Fraser and Luke Bailey at the moment not on the lead lap as Humphrey, and he is about to take the checkered flag. That's 5 straight wins for the man who I think will probably take the lead of the championship after tonight. In the end, he finished 8 seconds ahead of his championship rival Ben Smith, who will be happy to keep it going, you know, another good strong result, but he'll know in the back of his mind that Humphrey is there. Yannis Olber didn't think he was going to race tonight, and I'm so glad he did. I'm sure he did as well. He gets what is his second best result of the season. It's another podium, 2 cars on the podium in the Pro class for the Glass Tech Racing DXT team, which is great to see. Nils Kuller, what a night he's had. Dominant in the first race, dominant in the second. He will round out P1 in the Am class, 15 seconds clear of Robin Noah Brown though.
Yeah, really impressive from Nils Kuller. He really has stamped his authority on this championship. Today, Liam Fraser and Luke Bailey are coming through in the background as well. They will take home 3rd, 4th, and Ed Grove will be 5th as they all cross the line. I'm wondering, Joe, if we can just get a quick look at that overall tower, just to show everybody in class. And all the way down, right to the back of the field, even Reece Kitley down in P42 finishing. And you can see with everybody on the lap stand, you can see where the lead lap and the 1 lap down starts, where the 2nd lap starts, where the 3rd lap starts with drivers crossing the line, which is always fun to see. But there's Barney waving the checkered flag. And a great evening's worth of racing, it's fair to say, Joe. And I think a few drivers will go away from this very happy, albeit a few will go away thinking that there's a lot more on the table for them.
Yeah, Andrew McKinley continues that run as well. Sadly, I couldn't follow them over the line, as I think they would have been under blue flags, so finished slightly earlier than our GT4 leaders, but he manages to pip the championship leader Logan McKenzie to the line again. Something tells me it's going to be a little bit of a charge for the title by McKinley, who of course missed that opening round and has won out most of the last 5 races that we've had over the last 2 weeks. So he'll definitely bolster his chances at getting inside. Well, he will be inside the top 3 now, but he'll definitely put a charge on for the championship. It was Gordon Hales who finished ahead of Sarek and Tesla, with 4 cars separating them to Ben Smith in behind. Sorry, not Ben Smith, Rob Smith. So the top 3 in the championship finished P2, P1 and P3 on the track. So yeah, those 3 will start separating that margin down to Steve Rubino, who was not with us tonight. Neither was Jason Haddington, was he? No, he was with us. He finished down there in P4. So not a bad result for the guys inside the top 5.
We'll see how that can reflect on the championship standings going into next week, because it's going to be a very different circuit next week, as it always will be, and 2 30-minute races at Long Beach could really throw it into jeopardy again. Yeah,
that'll be another debut race for ESR. We've never been to Long Beach before. Tight and technical street circuit with barriers everywhere, and that roundabout as you head through, turn 2 or 3, really it's 1 car wide, and it'll be very interesting if we see anyone making moves into there. Looking forward to that one very much so. So that once again, we take a look at the GT4 results with first the Pro class. William Humphrey continues his fine run of wins. That's 5 in a row now for the current championship leader. He finished ahead of the championship rival Ben Smith, and Janis Olberg doing well to round off on the podium. Marius Hibmer is next in P4 ahead of the Flatlines Racing blue car of Jeremy Earlemans. A great finish for Flatline Racing. Francois Brandet has recovered his night very well. 25 places gained from the start of that race to see out a P6 in class. Laurent Don Uden is next, and he finished inside the top 7 before that cluster of British drivers. Adam Atherton, Joe Shapara and Jacob Jenner in the top 10. Jacob and Jacob finishing next to each other again. I'm pretty sure we've seen that happen once or twice already this season. That's Jenner ahead of Bonner, ahead of Jeff Hibbert and Stephen Donnelly, who just all finished 1 lap down. And so it seems like we have a full class of point scorers, which is always nice to see.
Yeah, always great when everyone picks up points. Same, sadly, can't be said down here in the Am category. Even though Niels Kula did win the race by quite a distance, he'll be delighted. The Latvian driver really has been, again, the class of the field here tonight, and will have extended his championship advantage over Robin L. Brown, who, albeit cut his losses, finished 2nd overall, and the Camry GP2 driver, I think, has to be happy with how it's gone overall, recovering in the end to P2, and Nob Brown will very much consolidate their position in 2nd place. Liam Fraser and Luke Bailey 3rd and 4th. They were followed by Edward Grobe in a very tight battle for the podium that ran all the way to the end. Dean Sheafy was 6th. Charlie Stottard and Rob Gregg were 7th and 8th, with Daniel Poole and Joseph Preston inside the top 10. Klaas Vellum was 11th place, the German picking up the points there. Reese Kitley is a TCR driver, so he won't be involved in the GT4s, but he was 3 laps down and finished 42nd overall. Stace, Ludbrook and Curler, none of them really got going, and they're a long way off the field.
Absolutely right there. Very long way down there. Dennis Curler probably didn't even get himself off the line, sadly. So that will close out the results for the GT4 lot, and now we move on to our second category, the TCRs. And first, it's the Pro class. Andrew McKinley led the way across the line once again ahead of Logan McKenzie, with Jaden Scotton 31 seconds off the back of those two, the next driver over the line to round off the podium. More good points for the Ignium team. Blaze or Motorsports, it's Keith Calhoun ahead of Scott Malcolm, the top 5, with Jay Corley, Kevin Marshall-Say and James Howarth inside the top 8. Max Nevincharny will be the last of the point scorers, ahead of Anthony Hilton, who had that late incident coming down the bank in the roller coaster section. He was riding really high toward the front of his class. In the end, though, he won't score any points at all.
Yeah, shame for him, but he will be back, I'm sure. Over in the TCR Ams, it was Gordon Hales who was the winner Not by much, though. Hussein Sarkadesla was only 5.7 seconds behind and finished down in second. Rob Smith, almost a mile away, 50 seconds. Probably was a mile away when Gordon Hales crossed the line. He will still pick up the points for the podium, as Jason Haddington will pick up the points for his P4 and Dean Sargent for his P5. Mark Parkhurst, Angie Fellows, Martin Kennan and Danny Weir in the top 9. It will be Reese Kitley who finishes 10th in this class, and therefore will pick up some points behind the two DXT Motorsport cars.
Very, very good stuff. So we can round off that, and I'll do the necessaries to get us prepared to speak to some of our drivers. We have a handful of our race winners waiting in the booth to speak to us, which is always good to see. So give me a moment and we'll start bringing them in.
Always good when we're able to have a little chat with some of our more successful drivers, fair to say, on the evening. And I think we are going to be able to drag William Humphrey in first after his double win once again. If my PC decides to wake up this evening, it can always do this. Sorry, I don't know if you can drag him in, Joe. It's been playing. Oh, hang on. Oh. Not quite.
There we go. He's with us, I believe. William, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Very good, mate. Well, I mean, not much needs to be said at the moment, mate. You're on red-hot form, almost as expected. Not to pile on the pressure, but that's now 5 straight wins in a row. You had a pretty good time off the line in both races. Talk us through if there was any sketchy moments. You were obviously battling with Mr. Ben Smith for some part of that second race there, but then came the pit stops. You left him in the dust.
Yeah, every time I caught up to a TCR, it seemed like it would favour him more than me, but that turned around as we got to the pit stops. That was sketchy. This track is really, really difficult to overtake TCRs, so to lap TCRs, especially through the flash throwing bit on the back.
Yeah, mate, totally right. And so, sorry, you caught me off guard a little bit there. I was just getting the calendar up, thinking, you make the note about this kind of track. You're totally right. We were just talking a few minutes ago, Long Beach is next, and that is almost as far away as you can get from this kind of circuit. We were saying how a lot of these guys will be doing Daytona at the weekend, so to go from Virginia to Daytona to Long Beach, I don't think it gets much more scarce than that, does it?
No, they're 3 completely different tracks, and I'm driving 2 different cars, but Long Beach will be difficult. It'll be much more about surviving more than it normally is, and anybody who survives will get a good place in the end.
And William, I mean, looking forward to some of the, not necessarily the races upcoming as we've mentioned, Long Beach, but to the championship ahead. How confident do you feel? How comfortable, I should say, are you in the car? And how likely do you feel that you can try and push on and really increase this championship lead you built up?
With the car, I'm still getting used to like the final niggles of it, bit of how it breaks in certain ways. But I feel like I've got most of the car down, and I'm happy with it. I definitely prefer over to the Mercedes, and I'm looking forward to the battle with Hibma and Ben.
Yeah, it looked pretty good down there. Obviously, in the end, you did run away, but at the start, Marius had a great qualifying, and obviously being the only Aston Martin on the grid, I mean, credit to him. He seems to be making it work, but it was a little bit like you last season, the outlier in the Mercedes fighting for the title. So it would be good if he can stay with you. But I'm looking at the timing sheet now, 7 at the top 8 in the Porsche, so there's no doubt, and I'm sure, as you well know, that that's the car to be in.
Yeah, I mean, like, massive kudos to Marius for driving the Aston. It's a boat, and I just don't want him to go into a Porsche because I'm scared. But yeah, this is turning into a Porsche Cup Championship, which is kind of cool, but it's nice to see a bit of variety every now and again.
Good stuff, Will. And one more from me before we let you go. I guess you had Milky with you tonight, so just talk us through that little partnership and the kind of things that he's giving you in the background while you're winning these races.
He's honestly amazing. He's really helpful at doing multiple things at once when it comes to spotting. He'd be talking to Luke 1 second and the next second talking to me. It'd be really helpful for all of us, and he gives me exactly what I need, exactly when I need it, and apart from that, I can just focus on driving.
Good stuff, mate. Well, congratulations as always.
Cheers.
Fingers crossed this continues the great run, and also, you know, we were saying Yanis didn't fancy it tonight, got himself on the podium, so pretty good haul of points for
Really
those
have.
guys. Francois in the top 6 as well. So good stuff for you guys. Thanks for joining us, Will. And well, I'll speak to you in a couple of days as we prepare for Daytona.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
William Humphrey then joining us. Always great to speak to Will after one of his they're always successful races, aren't they, Joe? They're never not successful with the kind of pace he shows. I think we can now bring in our winner in the TCR Pros, Andrew McKinley. He really is on quite a streak of hot warm. Andrew, welcome in. Can you hear us, Andrew?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Good stuff, Andrew. Well, welcome back once again. We were just saying how obviously you missed that first round, then you've turned up and you're sort of knocking on the door a little bit. 2 more very strong results for you this evening. Is the title in mind at the moment, or are you just going to let it play out?
I'll just let it play out at the moment. There's still a ton of races to go, a ton of rounds. It's too early to think about the championship, about that.
Yeah, and around a track like this, how did you manage? I think we saw, I'm not sure what happened, but there was a lot of TCRs struggling in the beginning. I'm not sure if there was a big incident. I mean, we didn't catch anything. From our perspective, you seemed to get away quite well. You left a nice gap to the GT4s at the start of the second race, and so it was just about managing the tyres. And on that note, actually, did they fall off toward the end of the race? I'm under the impression that the TCRs over these longer duration races sometimes aren't the most comfortable things to drive.
I did feel the tires going off a bit, but maybe it's just because just overdriving it, I think, is probably the main reason. Because if you overdrive it, you generate more heat into the tires.
But overall, Andrew, I mean, fantastic display. Looking at our calendar, I mean, everybody's calendar is upcoming. We've obviously had Virginia this week. I mean, Daytona, I'm not too sure what your plans are for that, but Long Beach then next week. It doesn't really get much different than those 3 circuits, does it?
Probably not. Long Beach is definitely quite a challenge because it's like super narrow and it's on a street circuit.
Yeah, man, I know.
Is it one you're looking forward to? Because is it one you're looking forward to? Because it can be a challenge, but you know, some drivers like those tight, dusty circuits more than others.
Yeah, it really depends, to be honest. I mean, these cars have got quite a fair size, not too massive, but probably the average size of the track that probably needs to be for overtaking. And there is some slight opportunities for overtaking there. It's not like Monaco or anything.
Yeah, you're right. There are a few. There are also, you know, corners that aren't possible. We're talking about that roundabout section through turn 3. Fingers crossed we don't see anyone going for moves there. It'll be tricky if some of the GT4 cars get on the back of you guys going into that section. They might have to just stay patient. Have you done much league racing around there before? I'm not sure if it's a track that's really very common in the TCR. I don't imagine it is.
No, I haven't. I've done like multi-class racing before, but I've never done any league racing in the TCR before.
Good. Well, always nice to speak to you, Andrew. And as we say, it looks as though there might be a little bit of a spark to start off that season. As we said, you missed the first round, but since then, it's gone very, very well. Logan, obviously right there behind you, so he will not be an easy competitor to take down. Anthony Hilton, though, I'm not sure if you're aware, you're only 4 points behind him coming into this evening. He had a bit of an incident right toward the end of that race, so you could find yourself inside the top 3. I'm sure you will by the time the standings are released. So congratulations for that. And as always, Andrew, before I let you go, if you'd like to give a shout out to anyone, then feel free to do that now.
Shout out to you guys for doing this league, and also shout out to all my drivers, and including Scott Malcolm, because he did quite a good job at considering last week at Road America. He finished very well in the pro category, so well done to him.
Good stuff, mate. Well, thank you so much for joining us as always, and yeah, good luck if you are preparing for Daytona. If not, good luck for this time next week around, as we said, what is a pretty tricky circuit.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. See you later.
See you, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew McKinley, race winner, two-time race winner tonight in the TCR Pros. And I think we can also have a quick chat with another one of our GT4 Pros, Marius Hibmer, joining us now. Marius, can you hear us?
Yep.
Good stuff, Marius. Well, first of all, welcome into the booth. And yeah, pretty good night's racing for you. First of all, I'd like to talk to you about that Aston Martin, because it's the only Aston Martin that we have on the track. Is that some sort of personal favourite, or did you maybe think more people would arrive to the championship in that car? And overall, how's it feeling so far?
Well, it's a boat. I kind of regret picking it because going into this league, I had never driven a lap in a GT4 at all. And I did iRacing officials like right after I signed up for the league. And on that week, it was at Solder, and Solder is like a very, very good track for the Aston. But everywhere else, it's just a boat.
For you, Marius, even though it may feel like a boat, you've had a good start to the season. A couple of podiums back at Road America last week, another couple of top fives today. You're going to find yourself firmly in the top four in the championship when the standings are released. How confident do you feel after your first few races about trying to get yourself one of the trophies by being in the top three in the championship?
Very confident. I'm very sure I can get one of the trophies. And honestly, if I was in the Porsche, I might be competing for P1 or at least P2. So yeah, I feel very confident. I've had some incidents, especially at Solder. So if I can keep it clean from here, I'm pretty sure I can get a trophy.
Yeah, I mean, only 27 points at Zolder, but since then you picked up 212 in the last two rounds. So really, really impressive work. And it is always good to see some confidence. But, of course, next week we're heading to Long Beach. Between now and then, I don't know how much Daytona you're going to be doing, but at three very different circuits, how much are you looking forward to the challenge?
I mean, I've done a bunch of practice for Daytona now, and I'm also gonna do a bunch of practice at Long Beach. I enjoy both circuits a lot. Long Beach, I've driven almost like I've almost never driven Long Beach, but from what I've driven, I really enjoy that circuit. I tend to really enjoy street circuits, and Daytona, I've just done over 200 laps of practice for now, so I'm really enjoying that now as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff, Marius. Well, I must say as well, I agree with Dara. I love the confidence. Most guys that we get in here are a little bit cautious to say, you know, I'm just going to do it race by race, but I like that. You've turned up, you've had a bad result in the opening round, but since then, as Dara said, you've absolutely hauled the points in, and hey, we'll keep tabs on you throughout the season. That lone Aston Martin charging his way through the field. Fingers crossed you can get yourself into that top three. And so, I'll close now, Marius, by saying if you'd like to give anybody a shout out, anyone who's watching or teammates or whatever, then you can do that now.
Yeah, probably just everyone at Flatline. They've been so welcoming and so nice, and it's been really fun to race with them. And it given me an opportunity to not only get into ESR, but also some Daytona and like endurance racing. And yeah, it's just been really fun to drive with them.
Awesome stuff, Marius. Well, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon in the coming weeks when you when you push on that charge for a trophy. So appreciate you joining us, and yeah, good luck with the rest of the preparation for the next couple of races that you're attending.
Thank you.
All right. Good stuff. Well, that was a new guy in the booth, which is always good. And I must say, Dara, I do love that confidence from Marius to say, you know what, yeah, I am going to get a trophy, and I might even challenge for the title. I mean, as he makes a good point, if he had picked the Porsche, it maybe would have been a slightly easier task. But as I said to Will, he was that outlier in the Mercedes. He managed to pull it off last season. And so why can't we see an Aston Martin going all the way? It'll certainly be a good ride to see him heading through the championship.
And he's got an argument. I mean, he made a point about Zolder not being particularly great for him. And since then, in the last two rounds, he's been the third best driver in terms of points, behind William Humphrey and Ben Smith. William Humphrey's picked up 300 points in 2 weeks, mind you. Ben Smith, 256. Marius Himmer still with 212. So really good consistency. Yannis Albert only on 179 in that little battle. But as it is, Himmer, for the time being, of course, those points will likely drop from Zolder if he's here for every single week. But for the time being, is P4 in the championship. But it's great to hear confidence from some of these guys.
Yeah, it is. It's different. I don't think I've heard that before, and I really actually do like that. So that's 3 rounds of 10 concluded, and we've said many times already, we don't need to go over it again. Long Beach next up for these drivers. A completely different kettle of fish, back obviously in dry conditions for the rest of the season, and back to that standard 2 30-minute races with that reverse grid order. So a different, a different dynamic for these drivers to deal with. But thankfully, we've got through the grassy banks of Virginia without too many problems, and it's put on another good round of racing.
Yeah, really pleased with all of the racing that we've seen tonight. Really been a good show. I think some of the drivers with some really impressive moves around the outside, down the inside, finding places around the circuit where it's not necessarily conventional to make an overtake, but doing it all the same. And it has been great to see, and really look now forward to later this week, of course, in the GT3s at Virginia, and also next week at Long Beach, which should be quite a race in these cars.
Yeah, definitely will be. Well, we'll close out there, and as always, I'll just run you through our closing message. So if you'd like to join us over at Evolution Sim Racing, you can do so by scanning the QR code on screen now. You can join the waiting lists for our Monday and for our Thursday sessions. We have over 700 members, and we have over 180 drivers competing across both of our grids. You can catch me and Dara on Thursday night at 8 p.m. here at Evolution Sim Racing when we cover what is round 4 of the GT3 Split B Championship in our 7th season. And you can also find Split A with our top GT3 drivers over on the Chaz Draycott Media YouTube channel. So thanks as always to everybody involved, the sponsors, yourself Dara, of course, James, who helps us put this all together. Yeah, we'll catch you all next. Well, we'll catch you all on Thursday, but for you TCR GT4 fans, we'll catch you this time next week when the drivers tackle those streets of Long Beach. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.